Hey, we're live. What is up? Hey, guys. This is the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist, and the only thing is matters is film. That matters is film. Man, you overthink it. Anyway, coming to you on a rare Thursday evening. A bit late. Trying to get 2021 going here. I know it's only our second show of the year, but hopefully things will start picking up. And I am Cole, joined by the one and only Jay the Stingray, because he's definitely the only Jay in the entire world that has that nickname. You're original. There's no other Jay the Stingrays. But anyway. So going back to Korea, which I realized one of our latest movies was a Korean movie because we did The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. The Good, the Bad, the Weird around Christmas. But, oh well, that's still kind of a while ago. So I think we only did one movie in between that, which was our last, which was the... Oh, shit, I can't remember anything anymore.
It was the Ice Storm, I think.
Oh, the Ice Storm, right. So this is... As Korean movies go, this is one of the more sort of famous ones, although it's overshadowed. This is Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance from director Chan Wook Park, the first installment of his acclaimed, at least in some circles, Vengeance Trilogy. And the middle one is the one that's really the most well-known. It says so right here on my DVD. And it's like, from the director of Old Boy. Yeah. Old Boy is a really famous one. It's the one that gets all the press. It's the first one I heard of, years ago, back in the early 2000s when this was going on.
Until today, I didn't realize. I thought Old Boy was first.
Yeah, no, Old Boy's actually the middle one. It's the middle child, which makes sense in a certain sense, because I think Old Boy is actually it was based on a comic, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I know there is a comic, but I wonder if the comic came after, because every once in a while there is something where the comic comes after, but I don't know. But anyway, which makes it a little different. Where, of course, this is an original script that Chan Wook Park did with a few other people. Right. So we've done, I know there's lots of Korean directors out there, but I always think of the two main ones are sort of like Chan Wook Park and Bong Joon-ho. We done Bong Joon-ho, and we did Mother way back. Like 4 years ago, practically, when we started the show. We did Bong Joon-ho's Mother, which is a really good movie. And I know we mentioned him here and there, and of course Bong Joon-ho has become quite the darling lately, and the Parasite was a big sort of crossover hit, finally, like a foreign language film, winning Best Picture at the Oscars and getting all sorts of buzz and getting released in theaters. Like I saw it in theaters over here, stuff like that. And what's interesting is I watched this yesterday, and I watched it again today since I have the DVD. There is a director commentary that Chan Wook Park does actually with another Korean director, Ryo Sung-won, and they do it together. But he says there's a part early in the movie where it shows our main character, the deaf mute Ryo, at his job at the factory, and he says at some point, I guess while he was still filming, he was talking to Bong Joon-ho about it, and Bong Joon-ho had told him that he thought that they should show more of the factory, that was important. And he said, I thought that was interesting. He said, I didn't change the script, but I did decide to extend the scene to show more of the factory. So that was Bong Joon-ho's input, which is kind of interesting. These guys all know each other and collaborate and such. And actually, the director that did the commentary with him, Ryo Sung-won, has a cameo in this movie. He plays a guy delivering food to the apartment. So this was back in 2002 when they're all pretty young. It's almost 20 years ago. It's pretty crazy. And we'll get to it eventually too. But another thing I kind of noticed is we're seeing actress Bae Doona, who we've seen before and talked about before on the show, because she actually has an English-speaking role in the movie Cloud Atlas. Mm-hmm. She has a sex scene in both movies, that movie and this movie. This one's a little more graphic, but I'm a big fan of hers. I've always really liked her. And just talking about how long ago this was, I mean, she was really young. She's only 41 now. Yeah. So, she would have been
early 20s.
Really early 20s for this role. She's my favorite character in the movie. I really like her. We'll get to I might as well say now, it's funny. She actually reminds me a lot of a girlfriend I had, although not one of the Asian ones. Oh. Just with some of her more. Now, I never dated a girl that was quite that far. She was not a leftist extremist terrorist, but she was somewhat something of an activist and that kind of thing. And there's a scene that I really like. It's funny. We'll talk about this too as we go, because there's certain. We've talked about this when it comes to a lot of movies and directors. Is when you're doing a narrative and telling a story, sometimes it's not all on the screen, right? Sometimes you just jump over something. And actually, for another director that I love, we talked about this a lot, was the legendary Japanese director Yasuhiro Ozu, and that a lot of Ozu movies, really pivotal, important parts of the plot, don't happen on screen. They just show up later and talk about it a lot, which fits really well into his sort of narrative because his movies like never had action or anything in it. They were, really sort of slow, sedate dramas, people talking in rooms. There weren't fight scenes or chase scenes or anything like that. And even the movies, so, I mean, no movies would even have that stuff going on in it. But I just mean sometimes some of the significant things, like, well, just say like Tokyo Story. I'm going to do a big spoiler for one of the best movies of all time, Tokyo Story. Is a big pivotal moment in that is the death of the mother in the family. We don't see that or the funeral or anything. It jumps right over it to later, which is really interesting. But anyway, so there's a few different things here. It's not on the same scale where he doesn't show stuff. And one is this movie, of course, what gets all the action going is a kidnapping. The kidnapping itself is not shown. So I did a big preamble just to talk about one of my favorite scenes in the movie is right after the kidnapping has happened. And the whole point is obviously when they grabbed this girl, it was done in such a way that she doesn't know she's being kidnapped. And so she's not worried, they basically, I think, say like, they're friends for fathers or something like that. And she's all bored with them. So the first time we see her with them is they're in like this little sort of like run down playground or something, or just like vacant lot. And, and also our main character's sister, which is the reason why this stuff is going on, is present too. She also is not aware it's a kidnapping. She's been lied to too. So she's like sitting on like a swing or something like this while the girl's hopping around. And Ryo's girlfriend, Yoon-mi, she's sort of hopping around and she's singing this old song that probably, I guess, would have been around the time of the Korean War or something like that, like some sort of, fight song about fighting the communists and stuff like that. And in a really weird way, although completely different context and location, that reminds me of a scene in my life with that girl I dated. Like she was even sort of wearing similar clothes, and obviously it was sort of a different song and stuff, but it had like the same sort of spirit to it and everything. It really lined up well. But anyway, so maybe that's another reason why I like the character so much. But anyway,
no, she was in The Host also,
right? And that's Bong Joon-ho, right?
Right.
Yeah. So she's been with him too. I haven't seen that in a long time. That's an interesting movie. Sort of a different sort of spin on like a monster movie. It's a much more sort of humanistic monster movie. It's really focused on the family, which is something I talked about when we did Mother, and when we talked a little about Parasite. I think Bong Joon-ho was really concerned about like the family unit and how they interact, and the things they'll do for each other and the effect they have on each other. I think that's one of the key things that he goes back to over and over again in film. It's very present in Parasite. I know the big obvious thing in Parasite is the class thing too, but this is, it's also class thing in what is it's two families. There's an upper class family and a lower class family. So it's about.
I haven't seen a lot of Korean films that tackle class either. So it's nice to see. Obviously I'm not Korean and I'm not very familiar with Korean culture, other than little things I've seen here and there. And
honestly, this movie kind of does too. And in the commentary I saw, I talked about it. Because the whole thing is our main character is quite poor. He's living a life with his sister, and they're poor. And even to the point where when they first bring the little girl back, she's like, "You guys are poor," because she's from a wealthy family. Her father's the president of this company, so it is in there. And and going a little further than that, this wasn't in the commentary or anything, but something I was saying occurred to me. It's like a lot of like the movie seems to focus on people that are kind of like unseen in society. They're low on the rings, on the rungs of society. It's the same thing with status. The people like mentally disabled people, homeless people, certain petty criminals. This movie really shines a light on that. That's really what it's about. And then you sort of have worlds colliding in a way where you have like a world of privilege coming into sort of conflict with a world of that.
Right. But
so there is some stuff to be said about class in this movie too, although it's not really the main thing. I guess the main thing is vengeance, I suppose. And I mean, that's the whole point of the trilogy, is it's three different ways, three very different stories of viewing the concept of vengeance and the effect it can have. I guess Old Boy's probably the most famous because it has like it's kind of the least realistic, maybe. It's more of like it's more almost, even though it has like some weird dark twisted shit going on, it still has some like more sort of mainstream sensibilities to it. Particularly, I think when a lot of people, I mean, certainly when I first heard about Old Boy and people talked about it, like people would reference that really great action scene in it, right? It's like a great, like almost in one fluid take, really awesomely choreographed scene of our main character fighting off a whole bunch of guys using a hammer, and it's just a wonderful choreography. And I mean, the movie has other stuff going on for it too, but that's really, I think, what draws a lot of people into that movie and has gotten that movie a lot of hype and people talking about it.
Yeah, and the remake, and an American remake,
right? And then they made exactly.
And unfortunately, someone actually owns the rights to this in America too. Forget what studio, but hopefully they won't make it.
I can't see them having the balls to like go far enough.
Yeah, Sean, actually, I was actually going to mention this. Like you feel sorry. It's like you feel sorry for the kidnappers. Like they set it up, in the beginning, to where you normally you would be on the side of the parents,
right?
Whose child was kidnapped and not murdered technically, but killed.
Really, it's like about sort of like how, in general, like people aren't really good or bad, but sometimes depending on the situation they're put in, what they might be driven to do. And yeah, I mean, the whole idea of the kidnapping, it is kidnapping, which is not a good thing, but they, their intent was never to have any sort of harm come to the girl. And the whole thing was, and then also they didn't do it out of greed. They weren't doing it because they wanted to get rich, and they weren't doing it just to stick it to the man. Although maybe there was a little bit of it in there, but I mean, it had a higher purpose in that they wanted the money. They wanted the money to be able to pay for the organ transplant for the sister. So yeah, I mean, when I watched the commentary today, Chan Wook Park had an interesting line. I should have written it down, where he was saying something where he was building on that whole idea. Most people aren't really all good or all bad. He says something. I'm paraphrasing here. He said something like most people are standing on the border of good and evil, which it was something like that. Kind of like the idea you can go one way or the other. It all sort of depends upon fate and your situation. So yeah, that's really what it is like. While most movies that are about vengeance are one-sided, it's about one party has been wronged by another, and they seek vengeance on it, and that's how it goes. This movie actually gives us two sides.
Right.
And when you think about the vengeance that Ryu goes on, it's almost more of a way just sort of to make himself feel better, really. Because I mean, while of course those organ dealers are pretty low as far as criminals go, they're pretty awful people trading in human misery and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, they're still not responsible for what happened to the girl. But I guess he feels like that's the one thing he has control of and can do, right? Like it's more or less his fault that the girl winds up dying, but he still thinks he backtracks it logically. Well, it wasn't for you guys screwing me over. What you did to me, I wouldn't be in this position. So it's not like anybody's going to feel too sorry for him taking them out, because they really are the scum of society. They're like the worst, like kind of criminals imaginable. But at the end of the day, his vengeance is still more kind of about himself, making himself feel better than really any sort of righting any wrong. Because no matter how he wants to spin it, the death he chose to kidnap this girl, he is the one who let her die on his watch.
Right.
Regardless of he's running for his sister and all this other stuff, it's still not their fault. So whereas the other vengeance is a much more direct thing, whereas the father wants to take vengeance on the people responsible for the death of his daughter. And yeah, again, they didn't murder her, and they certainly didn't mean for her to die, but the result was the same. She died, and it was their fault. So yeah, you've got two different quests for vengeance and how they intersect.
They did rape her.
What?
Young me. The organ dealers.
I'm getting confused.
When he goes in and starts killing him, like one of the dudes is raping her when he walks in.
He's raping a corpse.
That's a corpse?
Yep.
I thought that was her.
No, that's a corpse. Because I was going to point out how this movie really goes all over the place, that it doesn't just have...
But before that, it shows her...
dark things like that. It even has necrophilia.
Before that, it shows her go in there, though. It shows.
And she leaves. The only reason she went in there was to scout out their new place. Because remember the first time he took him to this other building that they move around. The only reason she went in there was to scout the location. Because all she does is like when she's in there is just act like, oh, I'm just here to give you flyers, and then she leaves, and they let her leave.
So
they're not raping her.
She left.
Then she just left.
I got you.
They didn't do anything to her. No, he's raping a corpse. And what's funny is maybe it's another one of those things where when something is like so memorable and sort of shocking in a movie, you remember it differently. Because the way the movie actually plays out, now that I've seen it again, is that you see him, you see the corpse splayed out on the table and the guy with his pants down, but they come in like and stop as he's about to be doing it. I remember thrusting and everything, but that must have been just my brain like adding stuff. Like I seem to remember like he was like giving it to this corpse for a while, but yeah, that's a corpse.
Okay.
So that's another part of the movie shock value, and just again how like scummy and low these people are. Because yeah, they have access to stuff like that. Because I mean, obviously, this is where they get organs and stuff too, right? It's one of the bodies they've stolen organs from.
Yeah,
but it's a prettier looking female, so he's down. He'll hit that. So yeah,
I must have missed the part where she leaves, and then I thought that was her. Okay, I got you now.
Now they bring her in, and all she does is just hand them another one of those flyers she was handing on the street, and she's just like, "Fight the machine," and then she just walks out, and they just sort of all sit there and watch, like you think maybe they would do something. Yeah, you think maybe they would do something. Because the whole thing was like to meet them, you have to do that signal with the flower and everything. Like she went through all that, so they must have thought it was fishy. But yeah, they let her go. No, they didn't. He wasn't busting in to rescue her. She was fine.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Again, they are terrible, awful people, and I'm sure if they'll rape a corpse, they'll rape a live person too. But we don't actually see it in the movie.
Yeah, well, we're kind of jumping all over the place, but he not only got his kidney stolen. They also, took his money, and he didn't get a kidney for his sister. So, yeah,
and the timing, of course, is the other. Like the movie's full of like horrible, dramatic irony, right? Because the movie starts with his sister is in really bad shape. She needs the kidney. It's the usual spiel, right? It's like, well, it's a long list before you can get a donor. I don't know if she's going to last that long. All you can do is take her home and maybe bring, because you can't afford, her bills anymore, do dialysis. But things aren't looking good. So then he's thinking, okay, I have to, I'll resort to this. I'll go to the black market. And the whole thing was, it wasn't just, and the worst part was, so he's been fired. He's lost his job, but he has a certain amount of money from severance pay. But even that money alone is not enough. They're saying, no, we're going to have to give you, oh, and of course the other thing is, even though they're siblings, they're not a match. He can't donate his kidney to her, right? So the other thing is they're saying, we have a kidney that will work for her, but you're going to pay us money, but also give us your kidney. Like they did steal his kidney in a way, but I mean, at the time he did agree to give it to them because the whole idea was what they told him was, you give us your kidney to replace the one we're going to give you. And that one will be compatible with her. But yeah, a lot of family people aren't like none of my immediate family. None of us have the same blood type. So,
he gets fired. And then that happens. And then they kidnap the girl. I know I'm jumping around. But I just wanted to point all this out because it's so ironic.
Well, I was just going to say, in between that is that before they kidnap the girl, and what drives him to that is like, so after the whole debacle happens, he's lost the money and his kidney and not gotten her anything. That's when, at the hospital, they tell him, sort of a miracle happened. There is a donor now, but you still have to pay.
Now he has no money.
And he doesn't have the money. So that's the beginning of this horrible spiral of misery. And again, some irony because, if he waited just a few more days, he wouldn't have had to go through any of that. He could have just paid the thing, gotten the kidney, and she'd be set. Instead, he didn't wait because it looked really bad. And but that's what forces him into the kidnapping.
They kidnap the girl, and then the entire reason they're doing all of this is to save his sister's life, and then she kills herself when she finds out that it was a kidnapping.
Yeah.
Man.
And there's still all sorts of more miserable things to happen, but yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there is a lot of pathos, of course, because this guy's not a bad guy. He's just living his life, and he's trying to take care of his sister. And let's go back to the opening, because it's a good opening. Because, of course, he's a deaf mute, so he has no lines. But the movie does start with his words, and it's a little confusing the first time you're watching. You're not sure what's happening. The first time I thought, like, I was like, are they recording this? Is he like making a CD for her? But no, it's like a radio program that you can call in and do stuff to. And he does it again too later, which basically signs his death warrant or makes sure that he's gonna go to jail, because he more or less like, admits to everything.
Yeah.
He doesn't give his full name or anything, but it's not too hard to connect the dots. He talks about his sister. But anyway, going back, yeah. So it opens with a radio personality, a female radio personality, reading a letter that he wanted to read to his sister while she was in the hospital. And of course, he can't read. So it starts with that, and her and the family, I guess, listening to that and talking about how like he plans to, donate to her to help her because it's his older sister, and she'd given up on her own dreams to help him so he could art school. And but then what happened, of course, was she got sick and he had to drop out, so he had to start working to support her. But anyway, it's very touching. He's trying to help his sibling. And so, yeah, it actually opens with his words. But of course, throughout the movie, he's a deaf mute. He doesn't talk. We'll hear him scream and make sounds of anguish throughout the movie, that's for sure. But, he doesn't have any lines. So it's an interesting sort of performance where, you could say it's an easy performance. You don't have to remember your lines. But that means there's just so much pressure on, your facial expressions and how you move and everything. All that becomes even more important because you don't have any words to go along with it. So that is a hard performance to give, I think, for an actor.
Yeah, it was like a solid 20 minutes before I even realized that he was deaf or deaf mute.
Yeah, so you have to really listen to those lines that the woman's saying, and at first you can be confused and not know that it's his words. But yeah, because she says something like, "I have, I can't see her." Like she says that, like, "I don't have a voice" or something like that. But you might, if you're watching for the first time, you might not connect the two. You're just like, "Who's this woman? What's she talking about?" But yeah, she's reading his letter for him on the air, like doing it as a service. Is what's going on.
It wasn't until they were signing to each other. It was pretty far into the film before I remembered that he was a mute.
Yeah, but I mean, even if you go past that, there's stuff all around. Because I mean, before you get to the thing with the signing, when it shows him at his job, he works in a factory that's full of crazy noise. Everybody else has like ear protection on. He doesn't, right?
Okay.
He doesn't have any ear protection, and
gotcha.
Yeah, because they're trying to show like how it's like sort of unique for his situation. Like it's a really noisy place to the point that people working there have to, he's unaffected by it. I still think there's a certain amount of danger to that, though. It's a dangerous place to work if you can't hear, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to say, a deaf person can't do this or can't do that. I'm not trying to tell people what they can and can't do. I just have to think that would have to be, I'm not saying can't, but it would definitely be a work environment where you would really have to be really aware of your surroundings at all time if you're going to work there as a deaf person.
Like, watch out. Here comes some molten metal.
They don't, he gets fired. So actually, his work there, exactly. There is molten metal and stuff going around. So you're right. Some really dangerous stuff. But of course, that's the only time we see it because he does get fired. But it still reminds me a bit of a movie we covered on here where we did The Machinist, which is all about a character. Rather than vengeance, he's just sort of losing his own sanity. And all the while, he's working in a really dangerous thing. And he's not deaf, but it's dangerous because he's got insomnia. So he's like super out of it. And he's, around all this really dangerous machinery. And of course, it does lead to a really bad accident, although it hurts somebody else, not the main character. But there are some things in that movie that remind me a little bit of this movie that came out a couple of years apart. I mean, they're really different. The other one's more internal and more psychological. Mm-hmm. But still, I guess just the machine stuff reminded me a bit of it.
And what exactly are they making? Is it like ball bearings or something?
I had no idea what they're making. I couldn't figure it out. I don't know how anything's made, I'm a pretty well-informed person when it comes to a lot of things. Not that if you told me you could completely make up like how something like a light bulb's made, and I would believe you. I'd be like, oh, that sounds plausible. Like manufacturing and stuff. I don't know. It's just magic, right? It's I
was just curious.
So yeah, I'm not the type of person that could extrapolate what's being made there. I couldn't tell just by looking.
It's an electronics company, so I mean, maybe just some part of electronics. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was just curious.
But anyway, so that's that's another early clue. Even though, I mean, again, the dialogue at the start does say that he's deaf and mute. But yeah, you see that. Yeah, he's not wearing any ear protection while the others all have stuff on them.
Mm-hmm.
The movie's tinged with green.
Mm-hmm.
He's got, of course, the turquoise green hair. But throughout the movie, like particularly the factory is quite green, but all sorts of environments are green. There's a part where they're doing the autopsy of the little girl, and that's green because I saw in the director's commentary they took something and put it over the window so the light would come in and be tinged green. So that was a big part of the movie, the color green.
He does a lot of stuff with colors in his films, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
You say Old Boy's blue, and then Lady is red.
Red, yeah. Yeah, Lady's a lot of red and whites, isn't it? It's almost like I'm sure Lady had some Lady Snowblood influence on it, right?
Yeah.
Now I really need to see Lady because I haven't seen that in a long time either.
Me either. It makes me want to watch both of them.
And as dark as all these are, I remember Lady as like the darkest. I remember Lady as like, I mean, this one is such a downer, like nothing, and yet it still has like some odd moments of like tenderness or humor. I'm pretty sure Lady doesn't have any. I'm pretty sure Lady is just like nihilistic and awful as fuck and ends on a super downer, just like all of them do. But I mean, this movie, when this is over, you know, things are bad. Every major character is dead and lives are ruined and people have suffered and stuff. And yet, at least on the journey there, as much as horrible stuff has happened, there were some moments of light and humanity and stuff. I hate saying stuff. I gotta get that out of my repertoire. Go back and watch all these episodes. I'm saying that, but anyway. Again, it's hard because I haven't seen it so many years for Lady, but how I remember Lady is like there was none. There's no light. There's no levity. There's no humanity. It was just all like suffering and
death.
Yeah.
Doesn't her family get killed and they just like rape her?
I think so. And I mean, I remember the end more than anything else. Like there's a part like where like after she's already killed like a bunch of people, there's certain people or a certain person was like has reasoned with her to a certain extent. It's just like, you don't have to keep doing this. And she's like, yeah, well, I will anyway. And she murders him or something. It's something like that. Like she's reached a point where she could make a choice and stop, but now she can't even stop herself. So she kills these other people or this other guy even kind of for no reason. It's something like that. I can't remember. I really need to see it again. Sometimes it has the title Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, but I never give it that because why would it? Just Lady Vengeance itself is good enough. Oddly enough, you know, this is sort of, you know, an odd title, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. And sometimes when it's a foreign movie, you might think it's a consequence of something not translating or something like that. But no, that's the English language title. The Korean title is something much more ordinary. It's something like Vengeance is Mine or something.
For this film?
Yeah. So the English title is completely different. This Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is completely different from the other. And he says, Chan Wook Park says that he prefers the English title. He thinks it's better. But that is not the title he got. And originally, I guess, his original working title for it was The Destroyed Man. And he said he got away from that because he thought that since it's past tense, it was sort of passive when, you know, he's thinking, you know, this isn't after, this is ongoing. So he wanted something that was less passive. But it was originally The Destroyed Man.
I don't know if you go to Wikipedia, you could see the promo poster, the Korean promo poster, and it's really like a huge spoiler. I mean, it really tells, you know, it's really fucked up.
Yeah, because it ends with sort of the final act of the movie.
I mean, it tells you exactly what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of messed up. But let's see, where are we? He's at the factory, and then he goes and meets with the organ dealers. They screw him over, leave him missing money, a kidney, and his clothes.
Yeah, he wakes up naked. There's some good references to other movies in the commentary too. And the first one they make is Terminator. He says he looks like a Terminator that woke up in the wrong place. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, so it's from there, and then it's like right after that that he finds out that they have another that they actually do have a kidney, and now of course he doesn't have the money to pay for it. But when I first watched it yesterday, I got confused because I hate to do this. And it has nothing to do with race either. This is just maybe me being more sexist than racist, and that I'm really bad at sometimes telling actresses apart. where there's a transition where, because it shows that he's living with his sister, but then there's a transition where obviously his sister's not there, and suddenly he's with his girlfriend. And I know they have different hair and everything, but I guess I wasn't thinking. So yeah, there's a scene where suddenly his girlfriend's over and they're sitting near each other. They're not even next, but it's a weird shot because remember there's something in the middle between them, the way it's shot, and but she's like smoking and he's got his shirt off, and you're like, this is a weird way for siblings to hang out. Well, of course they're not siblings. That's his fucking girlfriend, stupid. But yeah, yesterday I got that a little mixed up until I realized later. Of course, it's so obvious. But it's like maybe if you're dying from this, you shouldn't be smoking either. But it's not her, so I was wrong about that.
This is based on a comic.
This is too. Okay.
Sympathy. So is Lady.
All three.
And so is Joint Security Area. His film before this.
I mean, I knew for sure that Old Boy was. I thought maybe Lady, but I thought this was an original script. Okay, cool. It's comics. There you go.
Myung Chang Park wrote the comic. Yeah, I could have sworn I saw that this was an original screenplay somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
I guess he just based the screenplay because he wrote it for 20 hours straight or something like that. But I guess he just based it off of the comic.
It's interesting. Yeah, I always knew that Old Boy was, but I did not know that about the others. But that's cool. There's a lot of good set design in this movie.
Oh yeah,
that I like. We've talked about this before, well, of course, pretty obviously with somebody like who we did not too long ago, like Wes Anderson. But we talked about various people about how they're really detail oriented. I feel like this is another one of those directors that's really detail oriented. I really like The Apartment. Yeah. And I probably wouldn't have thought of this myself. Again, I'm drawing from the director commentary I saw today, but it's true. You only get a few shots of the other guy, the father. His name. I get his name up here. Dong Jin. Remember Dong Jin, he lives in sort of a nice condo, but it's actually pretty empty. There's very little in it, and it's a nice contrast because the poor people have a lot of stuff. And he said something like, generally when you have wealthy people, they have a lot of stuff. And he's like, but this is not that kind of guy. This guy, all he has in his life really is his work. So he doesn't really have any hobbies or anything like that. So he has a pretty empty place, despite the fact that he's wealthy. It is an interesting contrast that I like.
I kind of thought he tells the investigator that his wife left him when the economy tanked, and I don't know how long ago that was, but I was thinking maybe that was recently.
That's true too. He could have moved out of he might have been living in a house, and this is his bachelor pad or whatever, right?
That's kind of what I thought.
So right, yeah. So he doesn't have much with him. So is that true? But at least it's confirmed by word of God or whatever. He's the type of guy that doesn't have much stuff anyway, because he's different from a lot of rich people in that he started out like blue collar. He was like a civil engineer or something like that and worked his way up. And the way Chan Wook Park said it in the commentary was this is a guy work is really all he knows. And if you take that out, he doesn't have much going on. So it would make sense for him to have a fairly Spartan apartment. But yeah, I like that. And I really like the original apartment because they move eventually. But the original apartment, the way it's set up and the clutter and everything, and just the type of stuff that I'm sure there's stuff in there that I couldn't read because I can't read the Korean. But, she's a bit of a revolutionary. So I'm sure there was a lot of that kind of literature hanging around. But, it's not English language, so nothing I could recognize. But, she probably would have something like maybe the Communist Manifesto or something like that. And I know, being Korean, she would have been anti-communist, but still, that doesn't mean they don't have some of that crossover appeal when you have that whole extreme left stuff going on.
Did you notice when Ryu and young me are scoping out Dong Jin and the guy tries to kill himself? It's the balloons the girls have are from TGI Fridays.
No, I did not notice that.
That's a really nice restaurant there or something.
Maybe it is.
I mean, it's kind of like a Chili's or something, like a franchise, Applebee's, Chili's type.
I love that scene.
That too.
I mean, one, because it's really unexpected, of course. And two, because they react perfectly. Because think about it. They originally don't plan to kidnap the president's daughter. They just want to kidnap the daughter of the executive that fired him, who I guess is riding along with the president at that time or something like that, right? And so they're scoping this out. So they're in their car watching, they're doing what you do. You're going to be like a kidnapper. You're going to get an idea of what their movements are going to be, so you know when's a good time to grab the girl or whatever. And while this is going on, suddenly the president's car hits this guy. So they come out to the street and find out it's one of their other employees, who I guess they fired.
Yeah.
As part of the cuts. And he's flipping out, and he does this whole thing about how he's going to kill himself, and he takes out a razor and cuts up his stomach trying to do harikari. And and Dong tries to stop him and grab him, but he gets cut on the hand, and there's this whole crazy, confrontation going on. And eventually, at this point, we don't see Ryu and Young-mi at this point. Like, we don't know at this point they've been watching. It's only then, like, the camera sort of pulls back and reveals that they've been watching, and their looks of, like, shock or amazing. Yeah. It's like, what the fuck is going on? I love it because it's so appropriate. Because it's just like, can you imagine you're going to scope out this guy to pull off this job, and then this crazy thing happens right in front of you. It's so funny.
I feel like they almost needed like popcorn, like they're enjoying it so much.
Yeah. And it's on that moment where they decide it would make less sense. And he says, if we grab the executive's daughter, they might connect it to me right away. Because, he literally just fired me. So they decide that they maybe go up to the top and go after the president's daughter. But yeah, then they jump over the actual kidnapping. I guess they just found her on her way to school or something, gave her some lies, and she came quietly. Because the whole thing is, at no point during the kidnapping does she know she's a kidnapping victim, and she believes the stuff that they tell her. That I guess Young-mi tells her, since Ryu, I doubt she knows sign language. So yeah, but some really interesting. But yeah, that led to another one of my favorite scenes right off. Like I said, I really like that part where they're just hanging out in the park together. It's not even a park; it's just some like rundown lot, and she's singing the song, and the girl's really happy, and the sister's there, oblivious, not knowing they've kidnapped this girl. And then they go back to the apartment, and she comments about how they're really poor. And then I guess because they need to, they were going to do the standard kidnapping thing. They're going to send the ransom note, and they're going to show photos to prove they have her. I guess they thought, we can't have her like smiling and happy. So that's why he does a thing where he takes a necklace away and pretends he's going to hit her, and she starts crying. And he starts chasing her with the camera, trying to get her so that she's like crying in the shot. So awkward stuff like that is pretty darn funny, I think. And the necklace, of course, which plays a bigger role as going forward.
Right. And yeah, why was the cerebral palsy boy trying to steal the necklace?
I guess just the idea is, this is some sort of mentally challenged person, and they just fixate on some object, right? Because we're going to get to that, which is one of the most like gut-wrenching parts of the film. That adds to the absurdity and the tragedy, I think. So fast forwarding a bit here, the sister has discovered by finding some documents and stuff about how he was fired and putting some things together, discovered that they've kidnapped the girl, and in her shame and disgust, she leaves a note for Ryu saying, please release her and goodbye, and slits her wrists in the bathtub, old style bathtub. So we have to get to, again, it's just some bizarre stuff going on here. So there's an interesting juxtaposition that I didn't notice the first time. Well, it's not even a juxtaposition, but there's a lot of repetition in the movie. There's certain things you'll see in the movie, and then you'll see it again, done like maybe in a different way, but kind of the same thing. So originally when they send the note, and the whole thing is, Dong is supposed to meet him at this place and give him the briefcase of money or whatever. And of course, he just shows up to this derelict, empty place, and there's nobody around. But anyway, on his way there, Dong is sitting in the car driving to the location. This is after, he's been led around a few times. They text him a few times on the old phone. But anyway, this is the part where he's either before or after that. But it's because, he starts in his car and then goes to the subway station or something like that. So anyway, when he's first in his car and he has the briefcase with him, the briefcase is on the seat next to him in the front, and he actually has the seatbelt over it. And then later, after the sister dies, and Ryu takes her and the little girl out to bury her, the dead sister is sitting in the front seat, and she's belted in too. So there's another sort of interesting sort of repetition.
Yeah.
So you have this whole thing where like the little girl doesn't know what's happening. She's crying because the nice lady, the girl that was the lady that was nice to her has just died. I'm sure she seems to have figured that out, and Ryu can't really talk to her, so they're driving out, and it's already so sad. And he goes to the place because the movie opens with some while the voiceover of the woman reading his letter goes, we have flashback to when he and his sister were kids, and they used to go to this place right down by this river and play. So that's where he decides to like bury his sister, and he's going to do a cairn or however you say that word, where you put all the rocks on top. And it's during this time that the Cerebral Palsy guy wanders by and sees her sort of resting in the car waiting, and he tries to steal the necklace there. She freaks out and takes off, and then he follows her to the river. And it's he does sort of wander away because it's not like he chases her into the river. She's just sort of wandering around on that rickety bridge, which was constructed for the movie. It wasn't there naturally. And of course, we have the tragedy of her falling off into the river and drowning. All the while, Ryu, who is deaf, of course, cannot hear any of this and is not looking behind him because he's focused on burying his sister. So we get a really, tragedy of the death of an innocent child. She's the only true innocent in the movie, really. Besides the sister, I suppose. The sister's another true innocent. But
it's all the disabled guy's fault. She never would have died if it wasn't for him. See, she was asleep.
Well, that's true. I mean, he did wake her up and sort of drive her out of the car. So, yeah, but it's not like Ryu knew that. Maybe if Ryu knew that, he would have tried to kill him. I don't know. But I mean, it's just one of the most bleak and disturbing things you'll see in a movie. Is the shots of after she's drowned and she's sort of half in and half, the shots where half her face is covered by the water and the other's there.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And her body has, gone up against this rock.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's made, and he sees this finally. He sees it. And he's like, I almost said dumbstruck, which is funny. He's already dumb. He's thunderstruck. He's confounded. He's shocked. And then suddenly, while he's staring there in horror and disbelief at this scene, this guy staggers into the water and goes up to her body and like even uses his teeth and everything just so he can remove the necklace. And then goes, it's such an awful scene. But I mean, you get it. Like it just really even hammers home even worse because this horrible tragedy has been made almost like a farce, something grotesque.
Yeah.
The guy he's not the type of guy. It's not that he's evil. He's has the mental capacity. He doesn't understand she's dead or anything like that, right? It's like all he wants is the necklace. But yeah, I just find that even though more awful stuff happens in the movie, I think that may be the most gut-wrenching part of the movie for me is like the body of that child in the water, him staring at it in horror, and then just the grim comedy of this guy staggering into the water and pulling her necklace off and then wandering off with it. Oh, man.
Yeah, I was asking Cole before we went live about that guy. He's so odd in his movements. I was like, is he a ghost? What the fuck is this guy,
Now, according to the commentary, he's supposed to have cerebral palsy and that the actor based his performance on people with cerebral palsy. Although, I mean, there's definitely degrees of that because I've heard of people with cerebral palsy, even though, again, I'm not trying to use insensitive language here or anything like that, but messes them up a bit. They're not normal, but like they're still a lot more functional than this guy was. Like this guy must have been like the full end of the spectrum of that, because this is a guy that it seems very unaware of what's going on around him. Obviously, he doesn't have a concept of life and death, and I guess that's a thing too. But I do know that when it comes to cerebral palsy, so. But those are the words they used in the commentary, so I'm basing it on that because I'm certainly not any mental health expert.
The way he, when he's putting the rocks on his sister, and then the way the kid picks the rocks up and throws them away, like it almost looks like he wasn't even picking them up. They were like sticking to his hand. I don't know. It looked really odd the way he was doing it. Did a great job of looking weird.
Well, the thing was, instead of like, doing like bending your arm the way you would pick it, he was sort of like sticking out and going like doing like jerky moments, like just instead of grasping it the way a person would grasp it, sort of like touching with his fingers and then, throwing it off. Because that's when he first comes into frame as Ryu is covering up his sister with the rocks. And this guy just sort of staggers into frame and he starts taking the rocks off her and they have a sort of like a little mini battle before the other guy wanders off and fixates on something else, which turns out to be the little girl in the car when he sees the necklace.
Well, it almost makes you think like, oh, that's just Herman. That's old, crazy Herman. He's just around. He doesn't know what's going on. because he doesn't care that this kid's witnessing him, but I mean, bury his sister, but also the other girl dying. He's not concerned about that at all.
Yeah, I think that's also his shock and grief, though, too.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I mean, his sister was the most important person in the world to him, and he felt responsible for her, and it's his fault she's dead. He screwed everything up, and that's the other thing, too, right? Like, you talk about vengeance and how you feel for various characters, This guy is not a bad guy. He's trying to do the right thing, and some of it's fate and luck, and some of it's, some of it's mistakes, but he's feeling all this grief and all this guilt. So you understand why he takes his rage out on those dealers and those organ dealers. And it's not like they don't deserve it, but as I explained early on, you really can't put either of the deaths on them. But no one's gonna cry for them. But yeah, especially considering, I didn't know you didn't realize that guy is raping a corpse.
Okay, that makes sense, and makes it even.
And it turns out, and the big guy that's doing the raping the corpse, at least we don't know about the other guy, but he is the son of the woman who's like the boss.
Okay,
that's his mom.
She's a heroin addict.
I think it's morphine.
Oh, okay, well, opiate addict.
Yeah, well, and again, it sort of shows his kindness early in the movie because, like, he knows he's dealing with these. He doesn't know how bad they are, but he knows they're scummy organ dealers. But when he finds her like shaking, she's too shaky to inject it. He helps her inject it properly, and it's because he's given his sister injections. He knows the medical. He has the medical know-how to do things like that, and he's even trying to help her, this really awful person. Because I mean, these are some of the worst people in society, trading in human misery. So you're not going to feel bad for them when he murders them. Doesn't show the woman's death on screen, does it?
It doesn't.
No.
Yeah, don't you hate it when you just got the shake so bad you can't shoot up?
She knows it.
Yeah, they really do that guy wrong, by the way. They really are. They're the villains in this movie.
They are. And again, but it's still, as far as like the actual tragedies that happen, they're more indirectly responsible than directly.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, they are the sort of, they don't, there's no point where you're really going to, except maybe the part where she is shaking, you feel a little bad about her being an addict. The rest, they're really awful people, is the point. And whereas the rest of the characters, we see the good and bad of them. And that's really what drives the movie, is that we feel all the pain that Dong has felt. And you understand why he wants to kill the people that are responsible for his daughter's death. But we also know the people responsible for his daughter's death didn't mean for it to happen. And what they had done in the kidnapping was all for somewhat of a good cause. They were only trying to save his sister's life, and this was all they could think of to do. So they're sympathetic. So yeah, we got that crashing. And what happens in some really good movies like this is how sometimes you'll have opposing forces. And I know what's done is done. The daughter is dead no matter what, and there's no bringing her back. So I'm not saying they could have reconciled. But there's a lot of movies and stories that are good because you have characters that wouldn't normally even be opposed to each other, but something happens, and then now they're on opposite sides. Now they're enemies. And it's so unfortunate. And you feel like if they even just talk to each other for a few minutes, it wouldn't happen. But... Yeah. But it's like, this movie's another good example of it. It's like things are just too far gone. There's no talk. There's no explanation. There's no time. There's no room for understanding. There's no room for sympathy. What's done is done. I'm on this side. You're on this side. Because I think Ryu, if he could have, and it didn't work out that, he probably would have killed Dong if he could have, just so he wouldn't kill him himself.
Yeah, I think. Well, he was,
which also would have been tragic, right? Like, let's say. This is not what happens in the movie. Let's say it goes the other way. Well, Dong comes after Ryu and Ryu kills him in self-defense. It's still a super tragic movie.
Well, I think Ryu has been on revenge himself for him killing young Mi.
Oh, and of course he has that. Yeah, right. And he has that added motivation, right? And that's really the part where it becomes that's where I think it really becomes a point of no return. Because not only does he know that he killed young Mi, but he has to come face to face with her, and he can't do anything. Again, the really smart use of that.
In the elevator. Oh man,
the elevator. Another gut wrenching thing. Just he can't do anything because he knows the cops will find him.
Right.
or anything like that. So he has to just not react while like the corpse of his freshly murdered girlfriend has like the sheet fall off her, so she's right next to him in the elevator.
Girlfriend and also like lifelong friend. Like we find out when the police are talking that they were in like grade school together in a deaf school or deaf class.
Yeah.
And she was kicked out when they found out she wasn't deaf.
Yeah. She was a rebel even back then. Yeah, I really like her character.
Man, the way she gets tortured is absolutely brutal. At first, he goes in and like, sucks on her earlobe and you're like, oh, he's getting fresh with her. But no, that's for a better connection.
And they make a point that like, yeah, he's all business. There's no lewdness to this. That's not his mission here.
But did you feel that at first too, that it was a sexual thing? Like he's about to get fresh with her?
No. And I mean, the commentary again really solidifies it that like, he could have played it that way, but he didn't.
No.
They talk a lot about that actor, Song Kang-ho. They talk a lot about his performance because apparently a lot of the stuff he does is like choices he made himself. Like there was stuff like he's like, I didn't tell him to do that. He just did that. He said that for a lot of moments, which I thought was really interesting.
Did they say the same for Shin Hai-kun?
With Shin, I mean, they certainly praised his performance. And I mean, I guess it was sort of the same thing, but it was a little different because he had less direction to begin with anyway because he didn't have dialogue. So I guess a lot of it was leading up because they do say some things like they'll say something like, I like his posture here or something like that and things like that. But I mean, both guys did that and they would say like, because there's a part shortly after the death of the girl when Dong first finds out about it. Or not when he first finds out about it, because he's down at the scene of the crime and everything. But later, when he's talking to the investigator in his own apartment, they make some comments about like some choices he made there, about like about some of the gestures he did, like sort of to show where the character was at emotionally, like how at first he had his grief and shock and death, and how he's very quickly transitioning into sort of like already in like vengeance mode. It's like, okay, like the time for mourning is over. Now it's time to find the fuckers that did this and get them. And so they talk a little about that, like about like the choices he made and sort of his gestures and body language, sort of to convey that he moved from like the grieving period into that, how he'd sort of put those emotions behind him to move into that. Because as I said, like one thing that The Destroyed Man, which of course they didn't use, works really well. Is like both movies are sort of like about a deconstruction of humanity, having your humanity taken from you. Because by the end, both of them turn into sort of less than humans. They're animals, they're relying on an instinct, whether it's to survive or to kill or get revenge. Both of them are wind up stripped of their humanity by the end of it, which is another reason why, there's not really going to be any talking or reconciliation. It's too far gone. Both of them are too far gone.
I know when he goes to get vengeance on the organ dealers, the first one he like lunges at with a baseball bat.
Oh, for instance, he did that himself. Like he said, I didn't tell him how to do it. Like the jump was him. Like he said, he did that on the first take. And I was like, great. It
looks great. So it looks real.
Apparently one take for that.
That's great.
So that's pretty impressive.
That particular shot really reminds me of the hammer fight and Old Boy.
Right.
Which is amazing. I'm gonna have to watch that tonight, I think.
I mean, this movie, it doesn't go into an extended fight sequence. He just has a little more resistance to go over him, but it still works really well. But yes, I really like how that's done too. Like after she scouted out the building, there's a couple shots to sort of play with your expectations at first, because that he's probably going to be in there. Because there's a shot, we follow the other goon from like the cake shop. Right. They say it serves no purpose. I guess he just wants the box. They put the organs in the box. I don't know, because he throws the cake away. But anyway. You follow tracking shot, following me across the street and into the building, and then as the camera comes back just a little, as we're following him down the hallway, we get the outline that there's a person behind him. So the first thing you're going to think is, oh, there he is. That there's Ryu following him, but it's not. It's just some woman. And then Ryu is coming the other way, which I always thought was kind of cool. And he walks by him, and then he walks by him again, and then he goes down to the end to obviously find the bat, and then comes flying in at him. I'll give Ryu credit because there's a couple times where now they never explain his deafness, like if he was born with it or if he lost it over time or what. But he has a good concept of what hearing is because he understands the importance of stealth. He does it when he grabs Dong, when they're doing the exchange, when he ties him up and everything. And he does it there too. So he knows, even if sound is something he can't perceive, he understands how people do, and he has to be quiet, which I liked.
And he can read lips pretty well, I think.
Right. Not to do too much of a digression here, but one of my favorite characters in the Marvel Universe, she started as basically a Daredevil side character. It's a character named Echo, and she's deaf. And she's but she's not mutant, you know, because they make her kind of special, right? So she's deaf, but they give her you've heard of Taskmaster, right? In fact, he's going to be in the she's very similar to Taskmaster in that she has this ability, if she sees something done once, she can pretty much do it. And somehow that extends to the fact that for some reason, even though she's deaf, she can speak without any sort of like weird inflection, like she speaks like a non-deaf person would speak. Again, that's how you would all imagine it anyway. But anyway, in her first, like the first comics that introduced her, this would have been the Marvel Knights run of Daredevil. This is like 2004, 2005, something like that. Maybe even a couple of years earlier. There are a couple issues that are like just like Daredevil's barely even in them, and it's all about her. And there's some beautiful collage work by artist David Mack. He might have been the co-creator, or he might even been the creator. I don't know. But they're really great issues. I'm really glad I own the actual individual issues. And it's just beautifully done because they're told in collage. I might even have to show it off, but a lot of it is about how she talks about like what it is sort of to be deaf, like sort of that perspective. And I like how one of the things she talks about, and the idea for her is like she was born deaf, so she has no concept of sound at all. You know, it's not like she had hearing and lost it at one point. She's never had hearing. And she talks about how hearing and the realm of sound is like an invisible world to her. And it's not like I'd never thought about being deaf before, but that really put it in perspective for me. And she talks, and it's all collage, and it shows like how she uses visual information even more so than most people do to, you know, perceive the world and understand the world around her and all this stuff. And yeah, I always apply that later to other deaf characters. So I think about that a lot with this character. So I thought it was interesting that while he was a deaf character and sound means nothing to him, he was very conscious of how sound affects other people and works for other people. Yeah, which I thought was cool. I'm not saying a deaf person doesn't realize that other people can hear noises. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, if you're deaf, you know, you're stupid when it comes to sound. Like you don't even get the concept of it. Although again, I don't know. How do you get the concept of it? As I said, it's an invisible world. How do you explain it? You know, explaining sound to a deaf person is like explaining, you know, color or something to a blind person.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Because all you could say to a deaf person is, you know, let's say I was standing with my back to the deaf person and the deaf person came up behind me, but I heard them. I mean, how do I turn around and tell them that I heard them?
Right. They may not know that they're making noise.
Right. And then I'll say, well, when you stepped on this, it made a sound, but then and I perceived it, but like, how did you perceive it? You know, we hear things, but someone who's never heard and never will, how would you tell them that the sound, you know, register? All you know is that you have a sense. I sensed it is all you could really say. Like, you sense things with your eyes. You take in visual information and touch and taste, but you don't have the hearing thing, but we do. And there's no real way of explaining it. All you can really say is I sensed it.
It's vibration, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but I mean, that's how a deaf person might notice somebody coming up behind them is if they could feel a vibration. But I just mean, that is a separate thing from sound.
Right.
Because like, what is it? Like snakes? I don't think snakes are completely deaf, but they don't have much hearing, and they basically rely on that, right? Since they're always on the ground, they feel vibrations, and that's how they know things they can't see, how they perceive that might be what direction they're coming from and stuff like that. But it is, you know, it's a completely different thing from sound.
Right.
But yeah. Well, I think about deaf characters a lot. A couple of my favorite characters in fiction are deaf. Echo's one. The other is the deaf mute Nick Andros, who is in Stephen King's The Stand. He was always my favorite character in that. So yeah, a couple of my favorite characters are deaf, although one's deaf mute. You know, Nick doesn't talk just like this guy, but Echo talks. But
while we're on comics,
Maya Lopez is her name, by the way.
Are you familiar with the Nightmare run of Batman?
I think so. You mean by like what's his name? The guy that did the Max?
I'm not sure. I just know that they're modeling whatever the new Zack Snyder Batman after the Nightmare run.
I think that's maybe I'm thinking of something different.
Which it looks pretty cool. I mean, from what I've seen, the bat suit looks cool, and the Joker, Jared Leto is going to be back, but it definitely looks a lot better than he did.
Oh wait, is this not Zack Snyder? Is this the other one, the one that has Robert Pattinson? You mean?
I'm not sure. Is it not Zack Snyder?
Well, the movie called The Batman is not Zack Snyder. No, it's somebody else. The one with Robert Pattinson as Batman. And I do think it looks really cool. I'm really interested. I can't remember the name of the guy.
Yeah, it is. I don't think it's the same film. I think it's another film.
Oh, I haven't heard of this at all. Because the Batman one I was thinking of is The Batman.
Well, let me pull it up for you.
Matt Reeves, by the way. I'm talking about the one that Matt Reeves is directing with Robert Pattinson as Batman, and we're doing some sort of really weird, dark, twisted take on the Riddler, where he's a lot more violent and weird than in any sort of thing. Because yeah, I don't know anything about another Batman.
Fuck, maybe it's not. Nightmare Batman occurs partway through Zack Snyder's Batman vs Superman and features a trench coat wearing, gun-toting version of the Dark Knight. So is this going to be in like the new film they released or something? I don't know. Anyway, I just thought it was.
I'm getting really confused. I know that obviously they're doing. There was the movie Batman vs Superman, and a lot of people hated it, and I hated it. And now, years later, there's going to be a very different cut that was, I guess, a lot closer to Zack Snyder's original vision. That's going to have all sorts of extra scenes and stuff in it. And people are acting like it's going to be amazing when I doubt it. I mean, it's still Ben Affleck. That's not going to get fixed.
This is just a couple days ago. Or, no, more like a week ago. Nightmare Batman Returns and new look Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Oh, so this is a Justice League cut. It's not Batman versus Superman cut. I forgot that. It's a Justice League cut. Yeah, that's what I mean. Same thing, except I was saying Batman versus Superman. It's not Batman versus Superman, it's the Justice League.
Yeah, I was reading some bad information there.
Yeah. I won't be able to watch it when it comes out anyway. I've lost my service that had access to that.
Yeah, there's what the Joker looks like.
Okay.
So I was thinking this was a whole separate film. This is just in the different cut, right?
Yeah.
The film.
Although it's supposed to be almost a different film. Like, it's supposed to be really different, which is why everybody, like, bitched about it for 3 years and was like, release the Snyder cut. Because apparently when Snyder left and what's-his-name took over, like, he threw out a ton of stuff and changed a bunch of stuff. And
was it Joss Whedon? Is that who finished it?
I think it was Joss Whedon. And I guess he was a real dick to a lot of people, like the Ray Fisher and stuff like that. Yeah, I can believe it, because apparently everybody's saying now that like Joss Whedon was a dick even back when he did Buffy. That he was really manipulative and cruel, and he'd play head games with people. I'm like, Jesus, it's easy. Like, I was never a fan of Buffy, so it's not hard for me. I don't care about Joss Whedon. I mean, obviously he did some Marvel stuff that was okay, but he's not somebody that was important to me, so it's not a big deal to me. But I know for a lot of people, and I don't think it should matter. I mean, if you like that Buffy the Vampire show, doesn't mean you can't like it anymore. Hardly any
canceled.
I mean, hardly any show can get made nowadays without somebody doing something inappropriate. Or I don't know why people can't just be professional. Is it that fucking hard to be professional?
I think it was basically him banging a bunch of extras was basically the problem. Him cheating on his wife with extras, and it was apparently all the way back on Buffy. And
he picked on one actress for getting pregnant. He was mad at her that she got pregnant or something.
Charisma Carpenter came out. The
girl that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was mad at her for getting pregnant.
Oh, okay.
Well, there was other stuff too, but that was one of the things.
I haven't really read into it all. I just know like Sarah Michelle Gellar's come out against him now, so he's pretty much donezo.
Yeah,
I would think. In this, in this day and age, it doesn't take a whole lot.
I mean, so I have no idea when I'll be able to see this Snyder cut. I mean, I am curious just to see how different it is, but I don't for a second believe it's going to fix the movie. I think it's just going to be more stuff I don't like, honestly.
If you want to watch it, we could talk after the show. And we could find a way for you to watch it.
But yeah, like Justice League. I didn't hate Justice League the way I hated Batman versus Superman. I was just like sort of numb to it. Like honestly, getting past the things I already hate, like I hate Ben Affleck, blah blah blah. If we just shove that aside and forget about it for a second, like Justice League's biggest sin is not being bad, but being completely unmemorable. Like this is a movie that's like 2 hours and 45 minutes long, full of like it's one of the most expensive movies ever made, budget of $300 million, and I cannot remember hardly anything that happens in it. Very little. And it looks terrible. It's another one of those movies, and honestly, Zack Snyder, regardless of how much they change the cut, this is still Zack Snyder's thing because Snyder likes to shoot things through a filter to make everything look terrible. Like this movie's like so washed out, like there's like all the color is like black and red, and it's gross.
Yeah,
it's such a contrast when you take like an Avengers movie, how bright and colorful those are, and put this up against. And I'm not saying just because the Justice League is kind of the DC equivalent to Avengers, they should do everything exactly the same. I'm just saying they still are on the page in the comic visually similar. They are visually similar. They're bright and colorful and larger than life, full of superheroes and cosmic things, and yet the Justice League movie just looks like completely washed out and drab and yeah.
I saw the first Batman movie. The first Superman movie, and then I saw Batman versus Superman when we covered it way back when. And
yeah,
I hated.
For people that don't know, this was years ago when it came out. There was actually a campaign when I was on the Sausage Factory because I refused to go watch it, and they were saying, "Well, you have to watch it. You're the comic guy. People want to know." And people who watch the Sausage Factory, some people actually donated a little bit of money to pay for my ticket because I said I wouldn't pay because they wanted to know. And so that was kind of cool. So I went with Ryan, and of course, I absolutely hated it. Man, I hated it. I probably hated it even more than I thought I would, which is really saying something.
I made the mistake of watching the first Superman film the day before I went and saw Batman versus Superman. So I was just totally jaded, man. I haven't seen Justice League. I may never watch any of the cuts.
Yeah. See, I don't think Justice League will upset you or piss you off. You'll just be like, because that's more or less how I felt watching Justice League. I was like, who cares? And I remember almost nothing from that movie. And I've watched it more than once because I tried to like make it more memorable. It's just so not memorable. Like, okay, it's like even the plot is sort of bland. It's like, okay, Steppenwolf's going to show up and he has a bunch of parademons and you have to fight them. Okay, that's a good plot, I guess.
There were a few laugh out loud moments I had in that film. They're just so stupid.
Batman versus Superman?
Yeah. Like I don't know.
Even little small tiny things that I thought like they would get right, they even got wrong. Like there's a part where Batman and Superman, of course, are fighting. And this has been done in the comics a lot. There's a lot of stuff to draw on here, right? And it's early on, and of course, Batman is not a superhuman, so he has to use all the advantages he can. And there's at one point where he uses all this smoke bombs and stuff, right? So the Superman can't see. So I'm just waiting for Superman to go like he does in the comics and blow it all away. But he doesn't. He's completely confounded by the smoke. And he's just like, where is Batman? Like, as if I'm like, what kind of thought was put into this script? How many times in a comic have people used smoke bombs and things on Superman and him to just blow it away like it's nothing? And here, like, he can't do that. Like, so like even like with my lowered expectations, I was just waiting for that moment, and it didn't happen. Instead, this Superman was like, "Oh, he threw down smoke. What a tricky human. What am I gonna do?" Like, so even tiny things like that, they fucked up. But so anyway,
yeah, I'm not like even the casting. I was not cool with on either one. I
hate the casting.
Like I don't like either one of those guys as superheroes. I mean, I'm fine with Ben Affleck in movies, not as.
I like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, and that's like it.
Sure.
They have this really weird, smarmy, really young Flash, and I mean, Marvel has done this sometimes too. And I realize not everything has to be exactly like the comic, but I get thrown off when there's age disparities between characters.
Yeah.
And they really throw things off with the DC stuff because the Batman is obviously a Batman well into his 40s, who they even say has been active for 20 years. So he's been active for 20 years before Superman even shows up. and the Flash shows up, and he's like half Batman's age. He's like a
Yeah.
kid. You know, things like that throw me off because I'm used to them all being in the same general area of the
Right.
same age. You know, like Batman, Superman, the Flash, Green Lantern, they're all more or less within 2 or 3 years age of each other to the point where it's negligible. You know, so I find stuff like that really throws things off too. When you have some characters who are way older and some characters who are way younger, that it just doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, we can go on about this stuff forever. We better get back to our movie. I don't even remember
Fucking
how we got on it.
Man, it was my fault. It was my fault.
It's okay, but yeah, I will watch the Snyder Cut at some point when it becomes available. Like, but no, I don't have the HBO stuff anymore, unfortunately. So, because I mean, I'm sure I won't like it, but I am curious because I mean, think about it. Like for like 3 years, a group of people like bitched and whined and turned it into this whole thing, and then, you know, I watched, but last year they had that weird, it was pretty cool actually. They had some sort of weird DC showcase thing online that you could stream where, you know, they talked about upcoming projects and stuff. There was a big whole part about, you know, that and this girl or young woman, sorry, who was sort of like the leader of the movement. Like she had nothing to do with DC. She was just a fan, right? And she started the whole release the Snyder Cut thing, and it grew and grew, and they were talking about it. Like, so it is kind of a phenomenon. This sort of thing does not happen, right? But, you know, multi-million-dollar movies, huge franchises, suddenly the fans have gotten their way on something. So I am I'm curious. I am curious. I want to see how different it is, all that stuff. But I don't think there's any universe where I'm going to think it's good.
Yeah. I don't know. I may just see what the consensus is and I may check it out. But anyway, back to our bleak movie.
Yeah. Forget where we were. I mean, it doesn't matter. We don't do it chronologically anyway.
We were right around where she drowns, I think.
Yeah. So we were starting to get into Dong's own his own quest for revenge. But yeah, there is an aside in the movie too, like a subplot that comes up later, which is of course, I think it's before the death, but it's around the time when he's aware that she's been kidnapped. And I think, you know, so one of the suspects is the guy that accosted him in the street. Right.
Right.
So they go to his house and find, again, it's never made clear. Like, was it like carbon monoxide or something? Because I didn't even figure it out until I saw like the commentary that the idea was like this guy purposely like committed suicide and tried to like take his family with him. And the idea of like the pizza is like he gave it sort of like a last meal, like they're poor and pizza is not even something they can usually afford, but it's sort of like a treat because they're all going to die. So the idea was like, you never get to the full plan if they were in on it or if he just did it to them. But the idea is like they get to the house and find them all dead. And then they find that one of the sons is still alive, but barely, and they get him to the hospital. So that's a little subplot that does pop again up again later towards the end of the film. Is that Feng? I always forget his name. Yeah, Feng. But yeah, his family. But another shot sort of poor people sort of living in poverty.
Right.
So there is some class stuff going on here. We see just how devastating the effect is of people losing their jobs and like, you know, becomes life or death for a lot of people. So much death and tragedy in this movie.
That's all it is. It's not nonstop tragedy with zero payoff.
Right. And that's why there's certain people that don't like it, right? Because that's pretty much all they have to say. Like, let's see here. G. Ellen Johnson of the San Francisco Chronicle called the film a waste, referring it to as so bloody, scatologically violent, and consistently shocking. Seems to have no larger purpose than itself, which is pretty grim. Actually, that's not the one, because when you think about it, and they talk about this too in the commentary, he says it's bloody, scatologically violent. And I mean, as he points out, like he says, people think of this as like a really violent film, but there's actually not a great deal of violence in it. You know, there's 1 or 2 scenes.
Yeah.
It's more about the result. And I also like the matter-of-fact way they talk about making films, because at the end of the day, it's a film, and it's not real, which is something, I don't know, a lot of people, I don't want to just say in the West, but in period, just seem to have trouble, like, separating reality, you know, from fiction, because he says something like, you know, I think a lot of people like the film because I'm showing stuff that people don't want to deal with. He says, but it happens. And that's all he's saying. He's not taking some sort of sick pleasure in it. Like, oh, the death of children, that's fun. Like, no. He's just saying, this is something that happens.
Look at all the taboos we have. We have child death, suicide, necrophilia.
Yeah. I shouldn't smile when we say necrophilia, but I always do. I
don't know why this film gets such a bad rap. I don't know why it didn't get better reviews. Like, it's got like a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes or something, because it's, I was going to talk to you about this. It has some very long, lingering shots.
Mm-hmm.
And I never noticed that about his style before. Is that typical of his style? I haven't watched a lot of his films recently.
I think so.
Because
he talked about in the commentary about how he liked, this had less to do with lingering, but he would like to do something where we're up close with the characters, but then he'd like to pull back and give like a long shot of it sometimes to take it in, or sometimes he says sometimes it actually just lessens the horror. That's like one of the reasons why he did it with the girl drowning. Because when she drowns, it's all far off, like it's not close up. Yeah. And think about how he could have done it, right? He could have done a very visceral thing of like with the camera in the water and everything, and the girl kicking her legs and struggling. He didn't do any of that. And you could say that's restraint, or you could say it's something else. But however he chose to do it he chose to do that from a distance, which I think helps because it also shows the disconnect between Ryu and her at the time, because Ryu's oblivious. He has no idea this is going on behind him.
It's basically showing it over his shoulder, right? Like from a distance away.
Right. So, yeah. We see him and her in the same shot, and we see that, he has no idea. But so there's quite a few. It's
powerful. The way it was done was definitely effective.
The violence in the film carries no meaning beyond the creator's ego. But again, there's not that much violence.
That's not true.
There's one scene of violence, and there's like one scene of torture, and then there's sort of like some killing at the end, but it's all fairly quick.
Oh yeah, the fucking Achilles tendon, man. That's hard. Oh shit. Yeah. I think of a Pet Cemetery, It's always a painful one.
And I mean, I have trouble with a lot of movies that show torture, but this movie, I felt like there was more of a purpose to it. And also, it was interesting how it was done, because you get to see sort of, you really get a sense of where this guy's state of mind is at when he's doing it, because he's just unfazed by everything she says to him and does. And he throws the blanket over her, so he doesn't have to like look at her face while she's like screaming in pain.
But it also doesn't show it to the audience either, so it's kind of brilliant that it happens on screen, but it's still hidden from our view. So it's really more your imagination,
Yeah, I mean, it's accomplished a few things. One is accomplishes, of course, her sound, her screaming. Yeah. But then there's that great shot of after he's come back, and we don't even know at this point that he's actually killed the delivery guy. There's an innocent victim in the movie. Poor delivery guy, wrong place, wrong time, just doing his job. But we get a shot of him now happily eating the food she had ordered, and we get a trickle of her urine coming up towards it. And there's even a trace of blood in it. I mean, that's really chilling.
But it's like when, Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out and got such a hard rating. But all the
violence, like the fact that it showed very little,
it's all off screen. It's all, it's your imagination. Mm-hmm. So it's really brilliant the way that's done. And
really the only real brutal violence in the movie is Ryu's attack on the organ dealers. And I mean, those are both great. Because like I said, and showing sort of where their state of mind is at. Because you've got, on the one hand, Dong torturing young Mi, and he's disconnected. He doesn't, nothing she says matters or cares. He's shut off. He doesn't even really think of her as a person anymore. She was part of the plot that led to the death of this girl. And then, of course, after Ryu has successfully taken down the big guy, who, knocks the bat away quite easily, and he's going to choke him out, but he manages to stab him in the neck with the screwdriver. We realize that the woman is watching all this, and she's more or less helpless. And then she watches him go back out into the hall and drag in the unconscious body of the guy he hit with the bat. And whether he's dead or not, we don't know, but he's going to make damn sure he's dead, because now he just starts wailing on the guy. Oh, man.
And it lingers on that for quite a while.
And it lingers on that quite a while. And I think, again, it's to show his loss of humanity and rage he's feeling. Plus, of course, the terror of this woman feeling, because she knows she's next. And that's off screen, and I think that's really good. We don't see her death, but we know he took care of her.
Well, and if there was any question, that the police say three killed.
Yeah, that's too. But yeah, it's too bad about the delivery guy because you think maybe he could have let him go. Because you could say, oh, that's a witness. He saw him at that apartment. But it seemed, and I guess that's the other thing too. It seems to me that the difference between the two regarding how they go about their revenge is that Ryu didn't have any sort of plan going forward. It was like he'd lost his girlfriend, he'd lost his sister, and of course he was responsible for the death of the little girl. He was going to take care of business, but he had no longer term plan. You know, if he was going to go to jail, that was fine. Dong seemed to have a plan to start over. It seems to me that like Dong really thought that like he could get out of this, and even though of course he'd always have the pain and everything, but he would live. Is the difference, because Dong did things to sort of evade capture so that the cops wouldn't find him and things like that. And it seems like me, he was a pretty resourceful guy. The idea was, again, he's sort of a self-made guy, right? Like he started at the bottom, worked his way up, and became quite wealthy. So it's sort of like you get the idea that he feels he could do it again, that like maybe he'd go to another city, change his name, and start over. He'd always, of course, carry that pain with him. But I think that's sort of a difference between the two, because I don't think Ryu felt he had anything to live for and didn't really care what was going to happen. Although he did, of course, he didn't want to be killed by the guy that had killed his girlfriend. He wanted to take him out first. But after that, I don't think Ryu would have cared about dying. Whereas I think Dong had a plan to live.
Right. It's so funny that, you know, when she's being tortured and she says, hey, if you hurt me, you know, the people I'm affiliated with are going to kill you.
Yeah, it seems like a throwaway line.
Right.
And I think there's, you know, they don't talk about it in the commentary, and it bothers me because it seems like a bit of a cheat. So, of course, that makes like the ending kind of surprise, right? Like she wasn't bluffing. She actually has. But there's a cheat in there that bothers me. Did you catch it?
What, the dialogue at the end?
No, it's before that. See, after she's been killed and the cops come and find her and the delivery guy dead, and they start talking about her and her life, right? They're saying who she is, and they know that she's sort of somewhat of an anarchist and stuff like that. And they say she's a member of the blah 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 blah. Then they go, well, of course she's the only member. They say that, so that seems like a cheat to me because apparently she's not the only member. She wasn't bullshitting. She actually did have connections, but they do say that in the movie that she's the only member. And at the time, you accept it because you think, oh yeah, that's kind of her character, right? Like she's more of a wannabe,
right, than
an actual, you know, a real life one and something like that. It's funny. In the commentary, Chan Wook Park said, like, I even had people that said that I was like criticizing student activists and making fun of them. He's like, I just made this party up. It's not real. He's like, there's no crazy anarchist group in South Korea. I made them up. But he said, yeah, some people were upset and thought I was making fun of activists. He's like, I wasn't. I thought, you know, I was creating something kind of separate from them because it was completely fictional.
It was that's my one complaint about the film is I feel like the you know, when they go back and play her dialogue from when she said that at the end,
they talk about that too. That's a little hokey, right?
Yeah, I feel like that wasn't needed, but for some viewers that may not understand what's going on.
Yeah, he talks to the other director. They don't really seem to have a consensus on it. They say something like, you know, that's sort of an old device used in film, and he said, but I thought it was necessary. Or something like that. It's like they seem to recognize it's kind of clunky, and he says it's more of an old-fashioned type thing, and he said, but I kind of felt like it was necessary. And I mean, I don't know. Because the other thing was, the ending itself, like, it took him a while to come up with that ending. That wasn't the original ending. In the original ending, it just ends at, you know, before that.
And he doesn't get killed?
Yeah, it just ends with him in the car and getting the call about like the kid dying and him just being like wrong number and hanging up. That was the original ending. And then there was a whole other ending, not shot or anything, where he actually finds his ex-wife who has like a new family and kills all them. He's like, but I thought, you know,
why?
too far, right?
Yeah, sure.
You know, so
I like the ending. I
like the ending. I just hate that cheating line because you do have the thing. Okay, well, because when she says it, you think, well, she'll say anything to, you know, save herself. Right. Plus, it seems part of her character again. She's kind of a wannabe. You know, I'm a hardcore radical anarchist. Blah blah blah. Don't fuck with us type thing. So I like that. It throws you off, so you're maybe not expecting it. But that line where the cops say, "Oh, she's the only member," and I guess you can just show, well, they're wrong. You know, they didn't trace the other members. They didn't realize that or something. They made a mistake. But still, it feels like a cheat to me because it feels like they were telling me she was definitely lying, and it's like, nope, she wasn't lying. Yeah. So that I wish they didn't have that bit with the cops saying she was the only member.
Yeah.
Because there's one thing to do like red herrings and fake outs for the audience, and there's another thing to just blatantly lie to us. And again, I get it. The cops could have made a mistake. The cops could have overlooked something. There was something they didn't know. I know. I'm just saying. But I don't know. Him dying seems like the only ending. So we needed a way for him to die, and Ryu wasn't going to do it. So that works as well as anything else. Because I didn't think he would kill himself. I really felt like he did have a plan to live and have a life. Whereas I don't think Ryu really cared. Again, he didn't want to be killed by the guy that murdered his girlfriend. But, or at least Ryu didn't care if he went to jail, because he basically does almost a full confession sent into that radio station, right? Because he sends in a thing where they read a note that says something like, "It's my fault that my sister died," and all this stuff. And he draws pictures of the crime of the girl dying. So any cop, like, that's practically a signed confession. The cops can put that together in 5 seconds.
Right.
So, and he knows that. So either he figures maybe I'll die, or maybe the cops arrest me. Like, it seemed like Ryu, beyond if he could, take out the guy that killed his girlfriend, he didn't have any sort of long-term plan or care, because he'd already lost everything he cared about.
Right. I think he's given up, especially once she's dead.
But yeah, that's what I think separates it from other movies, revenge movies and movies about vengeance. So we have two different characters on different tracks for revenge, but they're interwoven, because one, his actions lead to him leading revenge on other people, whereas he's the principal target of the other guy for his revenge because of what he did. I mean, that actually doesn't show up too much in a lot of movies. Most revenge movies are very simple. Party A is victimized by Party B, and then Party A tries to get back at Party B. And, they usually do it in cool, spectacular fashion, whether it's like, "I spit on your grave," or whatever. That's at its like most base. And see, I guess that's the other thing. Like, all revenge movies can be boiled down to something that bad. So that's maybe another reason why a lot of them, even the better ones, don't get reviewed well, because they just think at its core all it is violence for the sake of violence and death and shock value for the sake of it, without anything. Where I think this movie just has so much more humanity and stuff woven into it. Right. We really, because there's plenty of stuff that is shocking, but think about, and they talk about this too, like when you watch a slasher, the deaths themselves are the spectacle. It's not really about the impact the death has or anything like that. It's just how these people are taken out in the spectacle of it. And of course, then we have some survivor that's going to escape or fight against the killer. Whereas this, we're really, I realize why a lot of movies don't want to show it, because it's gut-wrenching. But this movie not only shows us something as tragic as, say, that death of a little girl, but we get the aftermath. We get some of it is so crazy, I don't even think would happen in real life. Like, think about it. We have the cops on the scene. The father comes down and sees everything. And then when the first cop is interviewing him, it's an interesting scene too. They're in like a trailer or something. I don't know where they are. And you can only see Dong's legs. Like, the rest of him is cut off. We don't see his face. So we don't see his face for any of the dialogue. But the cop is being very, almost too professional, to the point that it's unprofessional, because he's being very callous in his questioning. Yeah. And then there's a part where he takes a phone call, and he's even worse. He's very callous about that while he's on the phone, right in front of the guy whose, daughter has just been killed or just died. Then they're doing the autopsy of the girl, and they don't care that the father has wandered in. No one says maybe he shouldn't be here. And again, this is more effective not showing it. We hear the sounds of them cutting her open and like pulling back her rib cage, and we hear all those sounds, and we see him watching it. Oh my God. And then we get like the funeral with the little coffin, and you see like the rest of the family, including her mother, his ex-wife, just breaking down completely. So all that is shown. In so many movies, first of all, most movies don't kill a child. Other movies that kill a child kill the child off screen. Right. And even a movie that kills a child on screen does not show all, crazy, gripping, devastating aftermath of the effect it has on the people that, loved this kid. And this is all there in that movie. And again, you could just say, oh, even more shock value. Whatever. It's still humanity and still real. Nothing about it is fake. It's how people would react.
Right. Right. So who is Mr. Vengeance?
Right, because there's two of them. And I mean, they don't really talk about it in the thing because it was originally not. Although, again, if you say the destroyed man, it would still reply to both of them, right? Both of them wind up destroyed. Both of them lose their humanity. Maybe it's just, I don't think that it means one. It probably does mean both. It's just too clunky to have it be plural, right? It's too clunky to have a title where it's plural. Like sympathy for the two Mr. Vengeances, or it's dumb. So well, I think it's both. And yeah. I mean, obviously, sympathy works. I mean, it's a little on the nose as a weird title, but the whole point is we sympathize, we empathize, we feel, real sympathy for characters. Even when we see them do horrible things, we understand why they're doing them.
Yeah, we feel sorry for both guys.
Right. The movie makes a point of showing us exactly what's going on. So we understand both of their motivations, both of their points of view. And it's hard to imagine, at least myself, that I would react any different if I was in either of their shoes. He even says at the very end in their confrontation before he kills Ryu, I understand that you're actually a good guy and that this is something that just happened, but I still have to kill you. And I think that's how a lot of fathers would be. They'd be like, at the end of the day, my daughter's dead and it's your fault, regardless of what your intentions were, or blah, blah, blah. So you get that. And as far as Ryu, you understand his motivations at the time were desperation. He wanted to save his sister.
Right.
And he'd been wronged horribly by these horrible scumbag criminals. So you understand him turning his rage against them because they're at least partially responsible for what's going on in this movie. So, yeah, you really empathize and understand the points of view. So that's really where sympathy comes in.
In a typical movie like this, I would be on Dong Jin's side 100% from minute one, that kidnapping and she gets killed, But, this film's completely different because it sets it up for you're already feeling sorry for Ryu.
Yeah. I mean, look at the stuff he's going through.
Yeah.
He's living this really terrible life, trying to take care of his sister. He gets fired from his job.
Yeah.
Reaches out in desperation and gets fucked over by these horrible criminals. Yeah. And then in a cruel twist of fate, finds out the money he gave them could have been used just to get a kidney legally, but now he doesn't have it anymore. I mean, it's crushing. The movie is just full of irony like that. I mean, it's a great use of dramatic irony. Yeah. And I know dramatic irony is a tough thing to use because so often it's hard to do it subtly. I mean, dramatic.
Uh-oh. Oh, we lost Cole.
Sorry, but I did that myself.
Oh, no problem.
I was fiddling with the USB. I don't know why.
Got a little bit of a odd sound on your microphone.
Still, right now?
Yeah.
Shit. Okay, hold on.
It's kind of odd sounding.
I might be able to fix that.
But
audio.
Yeah, the lingering shot when he's at the urinal and the lady's scraping a sticker off of the tile in the bathroom. And then she's not even out of the room yet before they come back in and they're slapping more stickers all over the place, which is just, a funny little nod that, and that's when they put one right in front of his face, organs for sale. Yeah. And that's when he goes and sees them.
Does this sound any different or is there still a problem?
Yeah. It sounds good.
Okay. I switched microphones. Hopefully that'll help. Hopefully I'm not having delay. I know last episode we did, there was a part where there was a big delay on my end and I talked over you for 2 minutes. I was watching it not too long ago. I was just cringing because I was like, Jesus, people watching this are going to think all I'm doing is just completely ignoring Jay and cutting him off. Trying to make a note about that. But anyway, they pretty much any part that has funny stuff, the director seems to really appreciate because he always points out, he's like, I think this bit is funny.
Yeah.
And as they say, he says, if you watch the movie with a certain attitude, a lot of it is funny. And he's right. And going back to what I said about Lady Vengeance, it's so many years since I've seen Lady Vengeance, but I'm pretty sure Lady Vengeance doesn't have any. I'm pretty sure Lady Vengeance is just dark, dark, dark.
I haven't seen Lady Vengeance in a long time.
I really need to see it. Yeah, me too. It has to have been like 10 years or more.
Yeah, I bought the box set and watched all three like a decade ago, and haven't seen them. I haven't seen any since. I watched this film yesterday and today.
Yeah.
What's up,
this
Monty?
film? This is funny. I can't remember where I bought this. Oh yeah, I remember now. No, I didn't get this at video. I was going to say it's the same copy because this is a film again that probably sometime really shortly after having seen Old Boy at college, I know I rented Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance from Video Difference myself. I think I watched it with myself. I don't think I had any friends with me at the time, even though back then I did have people to watch with. Hey, Monty. Okay, we lost Jay for a moment. You must have to take care of something. That's okay. We can swing back around to some other stuff. I'm trying to think if there's any character or something that we didn't focus enough on. But yeah, it's funny. I mean, this movie, once this movie's credits roll, every major character is dead with quite a bit of collateral damage around it. There's no real survivor of the movie.
Yeah, I was going to ask you right at the very end, when he gets stabbed, I guess presumably through the heart with the message on his chest. How did they do that, man? It looks so real. Like,
I have no idea.
Was it a green knife, like a CGI knife blade? Because he pounds it in his chest, and
maybe he has like a padding under.
Yeah, but I don't know. It was well done.
I know if it did, it doesn't show. Yeah,
it was very well done.
Sometimes you'll see padding in movies, like even like a martial arts movie, somebody might have padding on, and you can kind of see it sometimes. Don't see anything there, so no, I don't know.
Well, you feel the impact and everything, man. He hits him hard with that thing. And I know now, it's easy to do a knife with green on it or whatever, or not even have a blade there. It's just a knife handle.
Right. Now, I don't know really anything about the effects in the movie. I mean, obviously it's limited. There's not a lot going on, but that is good. That is a good shot.
I know a lot of the violence was real. Like he was actually beating up, I forget the actor's name, but Ryu there at the end.
Yeah, the part where when they captures him and he's unconscious, he's really hitting him there. And they were talking about that in the director's commentary too. They said, it's one thing when you have to like take a real hit. He said, but you have to, at least your eyes are open. He's like, he has to keep his eyes closed during this, and he's beating on him. He's like, and they're like, he did really well there.
Yeah, he took a punch well. And we didn't mention how he gets him. He like booby traps the door with somehow he's electrified the doorknob.
Yeah, I mean he's like an engineer, so he has like a good understanding of this, which is why he's probably good at torturing young me with the electricity. Like it's no big deal at all for him to rig up something.
Right. I think they may have said he was an electrical engineer when he started.
Yeah, there you go. So
yeah, that makes sense. I didn't think about that. Because I was like, man, this guy likes electricity. That's like his. Like if he was a villain, a super villain.
I mean, as much as it's a brutal scene of him torturing her, I still think it shows a certain humanity to him. Because I mean, if I was forced to torture somebody the way he feels he's forced to torture her, I mean, I'd have to do something like that. Like, I can't imagine cutting off people's fingers or smashing them with a hammer or all those awful other torture things that people do. I mean, at least this is still awful and it's still painful and terrible, but at least it's kind of a hands-off type thing.
Yeah.
He flips a switch and she screams and he's got like a thing over him, a blanket over her, so he doesn't even have to see her. I mean, I think that shows that he still has, even though his humanity is mostly gone at this point. He's ruthless, but he's not sadistic.
He's not taking pleasure in the act of torture.
Right. And it's the same thing with the licking her for ears thing. It's not him perving on her or anything like that. It's just him getting the business done.
I thought was really good because that's what I thought initially was he was perving on her, but he does it and then he puts the I don't know what you call that, a clamp or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, it's really going down now. Yeah. You're getting your head electrocuted, which I can't be good.
Yeah. And it's hard for me to watch because even though almost no, like I said, the only sympathetic characters, like fully sympathetic, because I mean, sympathy. The whole point is we feel, as we just talked about, we definitely feel a lot of empathy for these guys, but we do still see them do bad things, especially towards the end. The only like truly innocent characters in the movie are the little girl and the sister. Everybody else has their part to play and has done bad. Of course, there's levels of it. People are worse than others, but I just mean, so even though the girlfriend, young me, of course, has played her part too. Like she's my favorite character, so it's hard for me watching her go through that.
Right. Yeah.
I like Bae Doona a lot. She has a very interesting look. It's funny, she was a model at the time, but she doesn't look like a conventional model. I mean, she's pretty, but not like the way you think most models would be. I mean, it's so startling seeing this performance and then seeing her do like an English language movie like Cloud Atlas, because I mean, again, that's the point of being an actor. You play different characters, but I mean, the characters are so different. It's really impressive. I'd like to see more stuff that she's been in. I know she was also with the Wachowskis in the Jupiter Ascending movie.
No,
that movie is never. Don't watch it. Do not watch it. Like not even out of morbid curiosity. You'll just hate yourself if you watch it. It's that kind of bad. It's like
it sounds so interesting though.
I know. and parts of it look great, just like a Wachowski movie looks like. There's some stunning effects and obviously some really good art design, and it's all wasted on a terrible plot, and it's so boring and dumb and man.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean she's only 41 now, so she's still very beautiful. At least I think so. I know
totally.
might not be everybody's cup of tea. Like I said, she was a model, which surprises me a little because she doesn't seem to have typical sort of model looks.
She doesn't. She has a very young look to her, which in this film I believe she was around 23.
I think maybe 22. Yeah.
And then 2 years later, she was in The Host, which I think she was playing a schoolgirl, like a high school age person in that movie,
and it's pretty believable.
Yeah, she looks it. So,
and yet in Cloud Atlas, she looks like she could be anywhere from like 20 to 40.
Yeah,
she looks like one of those like ageless people. Like she's not old, she's not super young. Like it's weird.
Asians are like that though. They age very, very gracefully.
Very much so.
There's plenty of.
It's funny, but yeah, she reminds me a lot of a girlfriend I had, but not. I mean, this character, not the actress herself, but the character you and me reminds me a lot of a girlfriend I had, but not one of my Asian girlfriends. But same kind of sort of spunky type of energy, and had sort of a haircut kind of like that for a while, and wore clothes kind of like that. Very sort of fight the power type thing, but she was a lot of fun. I really like the sex scene in this movie.
Yeah.
It's better than the Cloud Atlas one because it's more graphic. You get to see more of her, and it's interesting too because it's interesting dialogue. I think they even say something like, "We think we're the first and maybe only movie to have like sign language going on during a sex scene, like sign language dialogue during a sex scene." Because it's weird enough to have like dialogue, and I like and it's weird. They're like talking about weird stuff, and he said he got criticized for that too because it's like after the tragedy. But he said I think it's how a lot of people react, and I think it's true too. It's like. They were just through something horrible together and they feel guilt and shame and awfulness, but I mean, at least they're alive. You have to sort of celebrate being alive and finding comfort in each other. It's not like they're celebrating.
Right.
So I think it's a good scene. And again, even if you take away the nudity and the graphics and stuff, and it's more, a less is more scene. I still think it's a good scene because I think it explains sort of how their characters process things. But yeah, I don't think they're bad people just because they have sex after something terrible happened. It's more like, well, we need something normal. We need something we can take comfort in.
Right.
I mean, it would be different again if they were just two people that like shacked up together, but this is a boyfriend and girlfriend that have been together for years. So it's like, But yeah, I really like her. She was in a movie.
She's done tons of stuff, man.
Yeah, a lot of TV. But I would not have seen because all the TV is Korean.
Have you seen Doomsday Book?
Sounds familiar.
That's one of these famous directors that did that one too.
That's Kim Ji-woon, I believe. Actually, Doomsday Book has two directors, Kim Ji-woon and Yim.
I think it's an anthology.
That's funny. The cover looks like the robot from the iRobot movie.
Yeah, it's better than iRobot.
I would hope so.
It's
but yeah, it is an anthology movie. It's got three different stories, but I've heard of it, but I've not seen it.
So what's correct? Is it Park Chan Wook or Chan Wook Park?
I think it's Chan Wook Park.
Okay. Because I've seen it. You've said it the other way.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, I think originally you said it the other way around. I've heard it both ways. I know one is like the Western way of or English language, last name or
I usually say Chan Wook Park, but I see it as Park Chan Wook. I mean, I guess technically Park Chan Wook is the proper way because Park is the last name. And
but don't they say the last name first?
That's what I mean. Well, Park, yeah. So you go Park Chan Wook. I usually say it the other way, but I guess the proper way or the way Koreans themselves would say it, they would say Park Chan Wook.
Aren't most Asian languages like that, where you would say the last name, the surname first?
Yep.
As I know, like Yao Ming on his jersey, it said Yao.
Yeah.
So it would be Ming Yao, I guess, or no, Yao Ming. Yeah, that's right.
Same thing with Japanese.
Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I'm saying it right.
So yeah, a lot of those Asian.
On IMDb, it has the surname last. So
yeah, I've just gotten used to reading it westernized, so I always say Chan Wook Park. But I guess technically, if you're going to say it the way Koreans would say it, or he himself would say it, would be Park Chan Wook. But anyway, either way is acceptable.
And it would be that way with all these. You would just say the last verse.
Right. But for clarity, we're just sort of doing it the Western way.
Yeah.
You can see a lot of almost all first names in Korean are like hyphenated.
Well, I wonder why that is.
I do not know.
Yeah.
Getting back to the violence in the movie, I think another thing that's interesting I like about the movie and its violence is that it's a rare movie that has a lot of violence in it and is not like a slasher or anything like that. It's separate from that, and there is no gun violence.
Right.
And I don't want people to read this wrong because it's not like I'm anti-gun violence in movies because I can separate reality from fantasy. In fact, I'm a big fan of gun violence in movies, especially some cool stylish stuff like we talked about before. Like I'm a massive fan of staying in the Asian stuff, like somebody like John Woo, he's kind of the master of it. But a movie like Heat, I really appreciate the shoot. I love a good shootout in movies and stuff like that. So it has nothing to do with like how I feel about guns in real life. Movies in real life are different things. So yeah, I actually I like gun violence a lot in movies. But I like that this is a movie that has there's guns don't even appear in the movie, and yet it's very visceral and there's a lot of violence getting across anyway. And it is kind of realistic because there's not really a lot of guns in Korea.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. So it's realistic.
Mm-hmm.
That's like in, whenever Guy Ritchie makes a gangster film, it's guns galore, but I don't think it's really that way over there, right? They have a lot of machetes. When they have like a spree killer, it's like a guy with a machete.
Yeah, usually. I mean, with some of the Guy Ritchie thing, yeah, I guess they're talking about some of the, really big criminals. They would definitely make the effort, to smuggle guns in or get them however they get.
Sure.
There's definitely guns over there. I like it when they talk about it in Hot Fuzz. When how well do you remember Hot Fuzz? That's my favorite like buddy cop movie of all time, by the way.
I think we may have done a commentary on that one at one point.
I think we did because I love it so much. So I love the part where when pretty soon after he's first arrived, Simon Pegg's character has first arrived and he's talking to Nick Frost and he's talking about and he said, I know that there's a small quiet village and blah blah blah. Well, it's not him even. It's the two Andys. Those guys are called Andys. They're like, just because it's like a quiet place out here, it doesn't mean like stuff doesn't happen. And he's just like, it's not just. He's like, you think there's guns in the city? There's guns out here. And he's just like, well, who has guns? And he's like, everyone and their mother out here has guns. And he's like, yeah, like who? And they go, farmers. And he goes, well, who else? And he goes, farmers' mums. That's what all it. Of course, that movie does end with a bunch of guns, which is pretty funny. Did you ever? you ever take your gun and fire your gun in the air going, ah? No, I've never taken my gun and fired in the air going, ah. And then he went, the Point Break reference. It's interesting. I should have written down the movies they talk about in the commentary because it's kind of all over the place. Oh, they do mention one that they do say is similar. I've never heard of it, or at least I've. And you seem like the type of person that would have seen this movie. Have you seen Ruthless People?
I don't think so.
It has Bette Midler and I guess Danny DeVito in it. And I don't know what happened, but Bette Midler gets kidnapped, and at some point she starts like, it's one of those like Stockholm syndrome type things. She starts to like identify with the kidnappers. They talk about that when they're talking about the kidnapping and how they like that movie, but I've never seen it.
In this film, they mentioned Ruthless People?
Not in the film. It was the directors.
Oh, I got you.
The two directors. When I watched the commentary today, there were 3 or 4 movies that they mentioned, and that was one of them. And that was the one that they most directly referenced. I mean, a few others they referenced just sort of had nothing to do with anything, or just to show. Like at one point, they were saying something about a romantic part, and they go like, and he goes, "Well, it's not Dr. Zhivago," which I thought was pretty funny for people familiar with that movie.
Ruthless People. Yeah, what a that's as 80s as it gets.
Yeah, so I figured you would have seen it because you've seen all those stuff.
Danny DeVito, Bette Midler, Judge Reinhold. Yeah. My name is Judge.
I love that. I love that.
Bill Pullman's in there.
Oh man.
Oh, I don't. Well, I've rated it, so apparently I have seen it.
Oh, there you go. But anyway, I've never seen it. I've heard the title, but I had no idea who was in it or what it was about. But they mentioned it, but they were just saying something about like parallels of like it being like a kidnapping movie or something like that. I'm trying to remember other movies they mentioned, but now I can't remember. There were a couple more. But
was it Ransom? Was that one of them?
No, none of the others they mentioned had anything to do with kidnapping.
Oh, okay.
It was just weird, random stuff, kind of. I can't remember now. Yeah, apparently the Zucker brothers did Ruthless People. Is that right? I think that's what
David Zucker and
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, David and Jerry Zucker. Also, Jim Abrams is credited as a director.
Yeah, they said Zucker brothers, and again, that's something I don't know the Zucker brothers, but I know that's a thing. I know they exist and they made movies, and I might have even seen 1 or 2, but it's not something that's really on my radar. But when they said it, I was like, yeah, that's a thing. I know that.
It's probably just not movies that we would be into. It's like a lot of Naked Gun, Airplane, Riders.
I mean, they're fine. I don't dislike them.
Huh.
They are.
Basketball.
I love basketball. Yeah. That's like, it's not like the best comedy at all or anything like that, but it might be honestly like the movie I quote the most. I constantly quote that movie and I've never stopped.
I need to watch
it's not like Horse.
I was looking at a chart of it was films by genre and like their popularity for like the past decade, and it's really weird what since quarantine happened, like horror films have just skyrocketed of as far as sales or whatever, but comedy is going like a straight decline like that, or I guess it would be this way since I'm going the other way, but they're like at the bottom now, like they don't even exist anymore.
I watched a comedy today, which is weird because I'm almost never in the mood to watch one. I watched The Man Who Knew Too Little, which is part of like Bill Murray's sort of like dead 90s period. Yeah. But it's one of those movies I like anyway. Like if it wasn't Bill Murray, it would be absolute garbage.
Yeah.
If it was anybody else, but since it is Bill Murray and I like him, it's an okay movie to me. It was the first time I'd seen it in many years, but I still like it.
When's the last time you saw a new comedy that was good, or even saw a new comedy?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I've seen some comedies that were good, but they weren't full comedies. They were like kind of drama comedies. Something like Jojo Rabbit. Jojo Rabbit's funny, but it also has a serious side, So yeah, it is harder nowadays seeing like just the straight comedy, because all the straight comedies I can think of the last few years were like crap. Like this wasn't crap, but and again, this isn't full comedy, but I watched on Prime the Andy Samberg movie Palm Springs. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't like it either. It just washed right over me. Like it was fine. I didn't find any of it really funny though. And I like Andy Samberg. Like I like a lot of his work on SNL, and I like the cop show Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But I mean, it's fine. It's worth watching if you're curious. But I don't know. I was hoping for it to be a lot funnier, and I just did not find it funny. And man, what's his name? J.K. Simmons or whatever his name. Does he have to be in fucking everything now? It's been 5 years. It's just been an avalanche of him being in movies. I can't take it anymore. And I don't dislike the guy. I'm just so sick of him. And there's no reason for him to be in this movie. Like his part in the movie doesn't even make sense. It's like they just felt like they wanted to put J.K. Simmons in there. It feels really forced to me, but what do I know? So, I mean, I guess that's like a straight comedy, and I did not particularly like it. I'm just rarely in the mood even to watch comedies anymore. That's why I kind of force myself. It's like, you like this. I know it's not good, but, some under-the-radar Bill Murray work, not too bad. But, yeah, if it was anybody else but Bill Murray, it would be a complete piece of shit. And people who like Bill Murray even say that, but I like him enough that I still like the movie.
10 years ago, though, or, even 15 years ago, like, that was one of my go-tos was comedies, it still is. I still watch a lot of comedies, but they're not new. They're old,
I like some 21st century comedies. They're just really kind of spaced out. Like, I like Hamlet 2 a lot. Mm-hmm. I really like that movie. I don't think Napoleon Dynamite holds up. It was really great. It's kind of seems to have its impact seems to have lessened. Doesn't seem quite as, at the time it seemed like a really unique sort of, and maybe that's because a lot of movies since kind of ripped it off maybe. But at the time it felt kind of really fresh. It had sort of like a weird, quirky, off to the side awkwardness that got imitated. So, there's a few 21st century comedies I like, but yeah, they're pretty spread out.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of them are more like a comedy drama type thing, like a Wes Anderson movie.
Right.
Because Wes Anderson movies are funny to me, but they also have their serious side to them and stuff like that. So, also I didn't watch all of it, but it was on TV and I watched part of it yesterday, and I still haven't come around to it. And I realized this is ridiculous, just silly comedy. It was Old School. I saw that in the theaters with my friends. My friends loved it.
I never liked Old School.
And I did not like I'm one of those people that has never, ever found Vince Vaughn funny, ever. Yeah. In anything. I can't name one thing where I thought Vince Vaughn was funny.
Isn't it one of the Wilsons?
Luke Wilson, yeah. I give the movie credit for certain things, though. For some of its ballsiness. Like, at one point, like, it's kind of weird because the whole point is like Luke Wilson is like the straight man, right? He's surrounded by like crazy people like Will Ferrell and these guys. They all want to, he gets this house and they turn it into a frat house. Like, he's the straight guy. He doesn't want it to be a frat house. He's against it, but they all kind of pressure him into it, right? But in like the craziness of all this, like Vince Vaughn's character throws like a big party for him and it's massive and all the college kids come and Snoop Dogg was there and everything. And in like the craziness, like Alicia Cuthbert, who is super young in 2003, is there, and like he fucks her, and then later it's revealed that not only is she the daughter of his boss, but she's still in high school. And I don't know if this is supposed to be played for laughs or we're just supposed to think like he's the man because he slept with a high school kid when he's like in his 30s. I don't know. It's a weird, like, I don't mind it, and I'm not saying it shouldn't even happen. It's just I'm not sure what purpose it serves in the movie.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those like prim and proper people. Like, I don't give a fuck that a character in his 30s is a high school kid. It doesn't matter to me. It just seemed like a weird thing to make a point of in that movie is all I'm saying.
This is Old School, right?
Yeah, Old School.
Yeah, man. That would never fly today. I know that much, And
it
wouldn't be celebrated that you.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what it's supposed to be at first. It's like, bro, yeah, but then it's like, oops, we're in trouble type thing.
Oopsie.
Yeah, oopsie. And I don't have any reaction. I don't care. Like, if they don't want to put it in movies anymore, I don't really care because it feels weird even in that movie. And I don't want people to mix it up because I don't care. Like, I don't think, it's immoral or gross. Fine. I don't care. I just thought it was kind of weird how they used it. I don't know. That movie, one of the guys who, like, it's weird because like the whole point is like they start a fraternity and some of them are like actual kids at the school and others are just like weird middle-aged men out of nowhere that they pull in, plus a really old guy that dies. But one of the actual students is the guy that I can't remember his name, but he plays the Jewish guy Howard on The Big Bang Theory. It's kind of funny seeing him because he would become a big star from that show just a few years later, but in 2003 he's just like a background character. Well, Will getting yelled at by Will Ferrell. But
Yeah, I mean, just look at like Pretty in Pink or License to Drive. Like that would never fly today. Like they're all about date rape and
I can't remember them.
Getting girls like panties and
yeah.
I
know
as a trophy.
Of that some stuff is some of the like Revenge of the Nerds. I mean, that's so uncomfortable. And I mean, I'm not one of those people that like needs to. I don't know. But I mean, I don't care. I'll admit it is uncomfortable. I'm not one of those people that says, "Oh, things are too PC." I mean, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't give a shit. I'm just saying, personally, that movie does make me uncomfortable. Those parts, because I mean, I'm like, who wrote this? Who thought that this was a funny bit? He fucks the girl, and she thinks that it's somebody else. Like, that's not funny, man. That's disturbing.
I mean, it's funny in theory.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, like, look at all the sex comedies, Screwballs and Porky's, and
yeah, and I mean, I like those, and I mean, and I think even with something like Porky's, for instance, was more self-aware than we give it credit. Because sometimes we look at like this 80s stuff, and it's just like, oh, people didn't know back then how offensive it was. I think Porky's knew how offensive it was, and it was just making fun of that. Because again, the Porky's was from the 80s, but set in the 50s, right? So I think they were. I think that's where some of those other ones got lost. They were trying to be like Porky's, but they didn't have the sort of self-awareness that Porky's had, which is funny because, I mean, I get it. Porky's is, lowbrow humor stuff. And yet I still feel like it had higher ground than a lot of the stuff that ripped it off, because I think it had a certain self-awareness that a lot of the ones that followed didn't have. I don't know. It's a really hard line when you're doing stuff like with stuff that could be considered like sexist or misogynistic. It's hard to do it in a way where you're kind of supposed to be like making fun of it or winking at it without it like crossing a certain line. It's hard to do. It's hard to do a satire or a parody because there's a line there, because the line gets blurred. The Beastie Boys talked about this themselves. They did in their back in the 80s when they had their first big hit was Fight for Your Right to Party, and in the context of the song and in that music video, they're kind of like a bunch of like jocks that do all that kind of stuff, right? It's like fight for your right to party and booze and women are objects and stuff. But that's not who the Beastie Boys are at all. They're like super not that. Nerds. And they weren't that then either. They were making fun of it. But a lot of people didn't realize they're making fun of it. They had early shows, and all the people that showed up to the shows were like drunk frat guys that like thought like this, So it's a hard thing when you're trying to do a parody of something, and you do it so well that people don't realize it's parody. So
these bros are just like us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can't really watch a movie like Porky's with 2021 glasses, goggles on.
Right.
Because it was just a different time where, all those movies were inappropriate like that. But the thing about Porky's is like, I think it captured young men around that age well, like how they actually do act, like, I mean, guys are slime bags, man. Slime, sleazy as hell, when they're that age.
Yeah.
And they'll do some terrible shit.
Like I said, and I can laugh at it in a movie, but I mean, I've been around that kind of stuff in real life, and I didn't think it was funny or cute.
Yeah.
So it's all in the presentation, I suppose.
There's a hole in the girls' locker room. Yeah, I would have taken a peek. I'm not gonna lie. But now, it's so taboo. But that's how guys are, I think.
I think so.
But anyway.
But it's funny, like, yeah. So lately, yeah. I don't know. I like finding humor in things like this, like something so dark as Mr. Vengeance, because I guess I have darker sensibilities. So it's funny, you see something that's really awful, but then it's juxtaposed against something kind of silly or goofy. I really appreciate that kind of thing. I think that's hard to do. I know certain people will be like, "That's sick, man," and I get it. But
like I've wanted to cover Happiness or a Todd Solid Eyes film on here forever. We just can't ever seem to sync up on finding it anywhere to watch. But yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, that's a cool movie that I haven't seen in a long time. You're right. We haven't really had an opportunity to really even talk about Philip Seymour Hoffman as an actor, even though he's one of the best of his generation, probably.
Absolutely.
And I know it's always, well, he died young, so everyone's going to make him sound like he was awesome. But I mean, he was pretty awesome.
He's got a pretty good track record considering, he was working for 15 years?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, I don't remember if this was on TV or if this was on Netflix, and I never saw it, but like that pirate radio movie that he's in was on. I should have watched it. Remember that?
Is it called Pirate Radio?
I think it's just called Pirate Radio. It's about how back in like late 60s or whatever, Britain had all these like rules about how you couldn't play this or that. So like certain guys it started with like a guy that got like some weird like offshore illegal radio station, but it wasn't illegal because it was outside the jurisdiction. Really happened. It was cool. And I think Philip Seymour Hoffman plays the guy.
Huh. No, I thought I'd seen everything he's done. I have not seen that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but I knew what it was, and I can't remember if it was on TV or what, but I should have watched it when I had the chance.
Oh, Nick Frost is in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very British movie, except for Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Does he have a British accent?
I don't even know. But it's the type of thing I'm interested in, so I'd like to see it.
Yeah, one day we will cover Happiness on here.
Always interested in
one of my favorite directors too. He specializes in
uncomfortable.
Yeah, humor that's not appropriate.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like slice of life, but the slices that like we try to filter out and ignore.
How can we make pedophilia funny?
I know. So yeah, things like that aren't going to be cup of tea. But I mean, I'm with you. No matter what the subject is, there are ways to spin things and make them funny. Yeah. And that doesn't mean the thing itself is funny. Murder's not funny, rape's not funny, things like that. I'm just saying, within context, there's ways of spinning things and getting humor out of a situation. That's all it is.
Like you said earlier, this is only a film. It's only a movie. It's not reality. It's fiction. Yeah. We need to keep that in mind sometimes before we go on tirades about things.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we should have touched on. Pretty much covered the characters pretty well. Who's the most tragic character? Is it Ryu or is it?
Well, I would say Ryu just because he loses two people close to him as opposed to one.
I think it's Ryu too because in a way he winds up defeated. He doesn't complete his vengeance. Yeah, his vengeance is complicated because at first he just he felt bad that he'd victimized this man, and he went out and got revenge against the people he thought were part of the reason for that. But he becomes victimized by the man himself when he takes his revenge on the girlfriend. So it's more complicated. So I think because he's sort of like defeated because he doesn't get to avenge her and he doesn't know what happens after that. With Dong, it's confusing because it's never made clear if he knows why he died or not. We see him struggling to read the note, but we don't know if he manages to or not. Although you have to think maybe he did put together that, the girl wasn't lying.
Right.
But who knows what goes through your mind when you're getting stabbed a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But they're both tragic. But I think of Ryu as slightly more tragic because like he loses kind of like he has to be defeated. But at the same time, Dong thinks he's gotten away with everything. He's completed his revenge. I mean, everything's still terrible. But I do think that Dong did have a plan to, restart his life, maybe. And then just suddenly he's out of nowhere killed by these guys and he doesn't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
But unlike the scale of tragedy, this movie's like a 10.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I mean a lot of not a lot, but quite a few movies and stories. Because it's true, I didn't give it enough credit when I talked about, how it's more than the A-B revenge. This is more of what's known as like a cycle of revenge, right? One thing leads to another, which leads to another, and it snowballs and gets worse like that. I mean, young Me only wanted to help her boyfriend save his sister, and she dies a pretty painful, gruesome death. Dongjin even admits Ryu is probably a decent enough guy, but he still has to die. Ryu kills the black market, the black market swindler, kills her sons right in front of her, and then obviously goes and kills her. I mean, she's not that sympathetic, but she's even she is made a bit sympathetic because of what she's had to go through. So
Right.
the movie's, masterful at doing that, which is why I think it's really important that in the English title we have sympathy in the title. Because the whole point is, instead of like a lot of movies where you just have the hero and you're on his side and whoever he kills gets in his way, you're rooting for him, get your revenge, kill these people. In this, there's sympathy all over the place for everybody involved. Some more than others, some less than others, but there's still sympathy to be had. And that's more like real life, right? As I said, most people aren't really truly good or truly evil. It's more like, and often you can even have somebody that you might even say there's a person who is truly good, and yet there's some reason, there's something that has caused them to do something terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you have a lot of different results here, because sometimes when some people die, it's you got laser guided karma, where it's like, perfect. And then you have the karma Houdini, the people that get away with it. And then you have all the muddled stuff in between, from bad to worse. But yeah, I can understand why people don't like the movie, and I can understand why it would, get less attention than Old Boy. Old Boy, after all, is a lot less complex. Old Boy is this man that has all these horrible things done to him, and then he exacts his revenge, and yet he still falters and he gets tricked by the bad guy. And although the bad guy does just like this movie, the bad guy in Old Boy is shown to have his own motivations and things you can understand. I still think in that movie, it's still hard to feel for him because he's crossed the line so far.
Yeah.
Because he does seem a little more unlike say Dong here, even though he's torturing this girl to death. As we said, he doesn't take any pleasure in it. He's not sadistic. I feel like the villain or whatever you want to call it, the antagonist in Old Boy does eventually become sadistic. I do think he's taking pleasure in inflicting harm and pain. After all, he has a whole plan for it and everything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is a much more realistic film than Old Boy.
Right, because Old Boy is more comic booky, right? It's such a weird idea. The idea of it's more of like a far-fetched idea that people can be locked up in this hotel. You pay money to have people locked up in these rooms to never leave. Like, I don't think there's anything like that in real life. That's not a criticism, but yeah, that's how it's less realistic. And then this whole idea that like when he comes out, he's like this crazy badass that can take out all these people. Yeah, that's fun. That's what's fun about a lot of movies. And I probably do prefer Old Boy to this movie, but not because of, I think there's any sort of deficiencies in this movie. And I think Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is definitely the one that is not looked at the most in the trilogy. Because Old Boy is remembered for some of its style and spectacle and maybe a bit of a twist. And Lady Vengeance is remembered for its brutality. Whereas this movie has a little bit of everything, but not a lot of any one thing. Maybe. Right. And maybe of the three movies that in their examination of vengeance, I think this is the movie that does sort of the deepest dive on it. They all do. I mean, that's the whole point of each movie, is to examine, how vengeance affects us as humans, and also, the effects that our actions can have on others and ourselves, etc. But no, I still like this movie. Because I did wonder. I haven't seen this movie in so many years, but I still like it. I still like it very much. I think it's good characters and good performance. An unconventional plot.
Yeah, this one's very, very close to being my favorite of the three, but I think Old Boy does edge it out a little bit.
And people can say what they want about it. It's funny. This is part of a line called Asia Extreme. And right at the very start of the commentary, Chan Wook Park says something like, people view this as an extreme movie. He's like, but I don't really think it is. But, everybody's going to have their own reaction when it comes to really dark, shocking content. and they can go back and forth about whether or not it's justified or whether or not it serves a purpose. And I mean, I don't want people to get the wrong impression. It's just because of the various movies we've talked about in here. I've seen movies with shocking content and stuff like that where I did think it was, too much or not necessary or, added nothing beyond shock value. So it's not like I'm always just like, yeah, extreme violence and shock value and rape and whatever you can throw at us is great. Like, no, I do think there's proper ways to use it. And it doesn't always have to be super highbrow either. I'm okay with some stuff just being there to be shocking if there's other substance wrapped up in it, I suppose. It's funny because one of the main things I remember is the necrophilia in this movie, and yet you actually don't even really see it. You just sort of see like him getting interrupted. I'm positive I remember seeing him like pumping away a few times. Not that it makes much difference. But yeah, I'm sorry that you didn't realize that at the time because it's a really big deal, I think, because it's again just to sort of show the depravity of these characters.
Yeah.
The deal in organs, think about it. That's his mother. That's his mother over there,
and he doesn't care a corpse
while he's banging a corpse.
That's a huge guy too. That actor.
Yeah, and you don't realize it until they come face to face, and he just knocks the axe away and picks up. And you're like, "Holy shit!"
Picks him up, yeah. With I don't know if it's one or two hands, but
it's two hands, but still, it's pretty impressive. Big guy. But anyway, I don't know if it'll be necessary to really do any of the other movies from this, but I'm definitely going to watch them again, especially Lady Vengeance, because I haven't seen Lady Vengeance in at least a decade, and I really need to see it. And so we've done a handful of Korean films now, a couple recently, although it had been a while. Like I said, it was way back when we started the show that we did Mother, which is a few years ago now.
There's a few more I definitely would like to do at some point, but yeah, maybe not in the immediate future.
Yeah.
I wanted to do Asian crime at one point. I wanted to do a series on Asian crime films. Maybe we can cover.
Right. We had a couple different series. One was Asian crime. One was British crime. There's definitely some good British crime I really want to see. I just don't know how to see them. I really want to see The Long Good Friday. That's supposed to be really good. And I don't know how much it counts as British crime, but I always thought it was a really interesting movie to do is, what's it called? It's like The Thief, the cook, his wife, and her lover, or whatever like that. It's a really weird movie. I've always wanted to see, and it was one of those movies that faked me out on Prime because there it is, but no, it's actually on some other thing like MGM or something like that. It really bothered me.
It's the one with Michael Caine in it that they remade.
Oh, Get Carter.
Get Carter, yeah, fucking Stallone remade that.
Yeah, it's apparently a terrible remake. I've seen pieces on TV, but not fully.
Yeah, it's. The original Get Carter is one I wanted to cover. The Day of the Jackal.
Yeah.
There were a few other.
I've never seen either of those. Classics. I just know their reputation.
Maybe some newer ones. Maybe like Romper Stomper. Not Romper Stomper. Rise of the Foot Soldier.
I've never even heard of that. Or, Rise of the Foot Soldier? Who's in that?
I can't remember.
You see Layer Cake?
Layer Cake is one I was thinking of, yeah.
Daniel Craig.
And that was an early Daniel Craig film.
You're thinking of Rocker Stomper. Maybe you meant Rock and Rolla. That was a similar title.
I got to do a Guy Ritchie. We got to do a Guy
I heard
Ritchie.
Rock and Rolla sucks though.
It's not one of his best. No, it's no Lock, Stock.
Guy Ritchie is one of those guys that I feel like I've grown out of. I liked a lot 20 years ago.
Well, let me tell you, watch The Gentleman if you haven't seen it yet.
I still like Snatch. Snatch is one of my favorite movies.
The Gentleman was just a couple years ago, and that is a great film. Matthew McConaughey. But
I like. I know a lot of people don't, but I actually like the Sherlock Holmes movies he did. But besides that, not really. And I tried to watch this King Arthur movie, and couldn't even get through it, man.
Damn it. It's like Big Beautiful Bastard or something like that's the name of the movie. That's not it, but it's something like that.
You mean Sexy Beast?
Sexy Beast, that's it.
Yeah, that's good.
Big Beautiful Bastard, that's close enough.
That's an alternate title. I like it. Who's that? Oh, I forget his name.
I forget his name too.
The guy that was Bane, wasn't he? Mark. Is that Mark Strong? No. I get Mark Strong mixed up with this guy. Doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter.
It has a few big names in it. Ray Winstone.
I like him a lot.
Ben Kingsley's in there.
Yeah. Ben Kingsley had a weird career. I guess that's what happens when you're around that long. Like, Ben Kingsley has been in, like, every kind of movie. And he played Gandhi for some goddamn reason. Yeah. Tom Hardy. Thanks, RetroCac. Tom Hardy.
Oh, was that? Okay.
I get Mark Strong and Tom Hardy mixed up a lot because they're both, like, British guys. They're kind of, like, burly type thing.
I almost forget that Tom Hardy's British sometimes because he does an American accent so well.
I know I've seen him in other things. I just can't think. I just think of him as Bane. I know he did other stuff.
I'm trying to figure out who Mark Strong is. Oh, he was in the Kings.
He's like a British guy. He was in the Kingsman, and he was in the first Kick-Ass. I haven't seen those movies in a long time. I wonder if they hold up. Speaking of crazy gun violence.
And the second one, I waited forever to watch. I watched it maybe 2 years ago, and I really liked it, honestly.
It's not bad. I think both are pretty good. And this is coming from somebody that does not like the comic and really does not like that writer, Mark Millar. Comic book. He's a Scottish comic book writer. He wrote for Marvel a lot, and that's one of his. Really do not like Sinestro. Are you referencing like the goddamn Green Lantern movie?
He's referencing Ben Kingsley played Sinestro, I believe.
In what? What Sinestro are we talking about? The only Sinestro I know is a Green Lantern villain. He's the guy with the yellow ring. He used to be a Green Lantern, but he went bad.
Oh, he was in Shazam, I believe.
Yes, he was the bad guy in that too. He's always the bad guy. Mark Strong. Yeah, he's getting a bit older now.
Strong, yeah.
But I don't know. He always seemed like a very powerful guy. He just had the physique and that presence. He was always really intense characters and stuff.
Well,
yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of British guys like that. Like, speaking of Guy Ritchie, oh shit. You know, whenever you need like a big tough British guy, I'm the fucking juggernaut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that guy's name? Fucking Vinny
Jones. Vinny Jones. Yeah. He's an entertaining guy. He's kind of a one-note guy, but his note is good. So
he was in one of the Guy Ritchie films, wasn't he? I think he was in Rock and Rolla.
Yeah, so I brought him up. He's in several. He's in Lock, Stock, and Snatch. I love him in Snatch. He's Tony in Snatch.
Snatch is a good movie.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard some people say, like, you know, Lock, Stock is way better, but Snatch is the more, you know, pleasing and mainstream one. But I don't know. I think Snatch is every bit as good as Lock, Stock.
I love Brad Pitt in Snatch.
Yeah, that's a fun performance. Brad Pitt with the crazy accent.
Yeah. Crazy accent. Crazy shit.
Crazy language more so than accent. He's not speaking English.
It's like a British redneck.
Yeah, the Pikeys, fucking Pikey. And I like that because it was before. Not that he's not. I mean, we talked about this before. I mean, I don't have any issue with what's his name as an action star. He's fine. You know, he's in every movie now. The British action star. Jason Statham. But I like that Jason Statham is just sort of a guy in Snatch. You know, he's not a badass. He's just a guy. And, you know, he winds up in trouble and he has to get his way out. But, you know, he's not killing a bunch of people or fighting or anything like that. He's just a guy. But then, like, a couple years later, getting movies. And I'm fine. He is a good badass. I'm just saying it's kind of refreshing to see him play, like, just sort of a more normal character who's not, like, always kicking ass and killing people and stuff.
I'll tell you, man, some of those Transporter movies are pretty badass.
Yeah, well, yeah, they got good choreography. Doesn't Corey Yen direct or do some of that? So that would explain it.
So Pikeys are gypsies.
Yep.
I never realized that. Okay.
Oh yeah, they say it right in the movie. All they care about is caravans, right? Getting your caravan to move around. But yeah, they call them gypsies and stuff in the movie too.
It's been a long time since I've seen Snatch.
You should watch it again. Give yourself a treat because I promise it'll be just as entertaining.
I think I have it on Blu-ray, I believe.
It's one of the oldest DVDs I own. Like back when DVDs were first becoming a thing, and I was my first couple of years of university. I was slowly building a collection. That was like one of the first like 10 DVDs I had was Snatch.
I miss. There was a website called Film Aficionado. It was DVD Aficionado, and they changed the name when Blu-ray became bigger.
I had Alien. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's gone now. They couldn't keep it up. They didn't have the funds to keep it going. But I had my entire collection on there. So okay, damn.
Like my first 10 movies roughly was something like Alien and Aliens. The slipcase box covers. Like Snatch, Akira. 3 or 4 others.
The snapper cases, right? Those shitty cardboard ones.
I never owned a snapper case because I hated them. I hated them. I refused to buy. Even back then, before we had so many better options, I wouldn't even buy them. I don't own a single movie with those. If you mean where the black part goes over the side of it, yeah, never owned a single one. I hated them.
I hate them. I have some, but I do not like them. I don't know. I don't think anybody did.
Yeah, probably not.
But anyway, I was saying that website, I had my entire collection on there. So if I'm like, do I own that? I could look and go look at that website. I'd be like, yeah, I own that. So I won't.
I don't own as many movies as you, so I can keep track of what I own.
But I think I own Snatch. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to go look.
I'd like to have it on Blu-ray. I mean, it's worth getting on Blu-ray.
I finally have my whole collection together.
Fight Club was one of the first movies I owned, and what's funny is it was one of the movies I lost in the Great Robbery, and I only replaced it 2 years ago. Really? Almost all those movies I never replaced. Only 2 or 3 of them did I actually replace. Others I just never got again. Like Amelie, I lost Amelie. I never got it again. I should. I love Amelie.
I don't think I own that one either. I need to buy that.
Did we do Amelie? Yeah, we did.
Pretty sure we did. That was one that we got lambasted when we did the City of Lost Children.
Oh yeah, that guy. He was saying that everything we said about it was wrong.
Have you seen Amelie, you pieces of shit?
And then he tried to lecture us on he's like, I hope you didn't watch the dubbed version and you actually listened to the French. And I was like,
don't watch our shit.
I was like, I speak French, you idiot. I didn't even say that because I'm not that mean. I should have been, but I wasn't. I just said, well, actually, I speak French, so I can, so yes, I watch it in French, and I don't need subtitles, although I like to have them there.
But I mean, we harp on not watching dub versions.
I know. This is some guy that was randomly found the movie that he liked, saw some people talk about it, decided he'd tell us we were wrong. Didn't even make sense. At one point, he was saying something how we were all wrong about the dreams and the nightmares the kids were having. He said something it's a fairy tale and kids are innocent, so they can't have nightmares. Doesn't make any fucking sense. Nobody has more nightmares in the world than kids. Most adults, once you become an adult, your nightmares go way down. Mine don't, by the way. I have almost as many. The average adult has one nightmare a year. But when you're a kid, you get nightmares all the fucking time. So what the hell is he talking about? He had all these dumb rules for how fantasy works that, are just made up garbage. Anyway, if that guy's watching, screw you, buddy.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure he probably never came back.
No, he wasn't happy with our interpretation. Yeah. But I disagree with
I mean, what else could we say? We were just well, we're sorry we didn't, think the exact same things you thought.
That's why this is a discussion.
Yeah. We're not on here saying absolute things about any of these movies. We're just saying how we see them. So if people have different interpretations, that's fine. But I mean, this guy was just snotty about it.
I was going to say we should cover more films, but I think we've done the 2 of the good ones. So
yeah, they're the 2 really cool. I mean, the diner or whatever, or delicatessen or whatever it is interesting. I don't know if we get a lot out of it though.
It's very much style over substance. That one.
It's an interesting concept. I love the setting, right? It's a unique sort of setting, but it's kind of one note besides that.
I mean, Micmacs is great too, but that's.
I mean, I need to watch that again because I barely remember that one.
It's pretty much, I think we can probably skip the rest of these. Even though I do like the films, I think we kind of retreading stuff we've already talked about.
Yeah, and there's interesting things to think about, such a filmmaker making an aliens movie. It's weird, and you see some of his style in that,
Yeah.
and you wonder how it came to happen, like why this was chosen.
Why did you choose this guy? I mean,
Yeah.
I love the director, and I don't hate Alien Resurrection like most people do, but I do. It's a very odd choice. I think the whole Sigourney Weaver clone is the worst part of that whole fucking movie.
I can't say it. I hate what's her name?
Winona Ryder.
Yeah, I hate all she does and bitch and whine in that movie. Every scene is her like a like I just want to kill her and throttle her.
She's an android.
Oh yeah. I mean, there always has to be an android reveal in those movies, and she's the worst one because she seems the least like one, and she sucks.
I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of her as an actress, honestly.
I can't stand her. As I said, I think she's single-handedly ruined some movies.
Like she's okay, and
she's in the Age of Innocence. You want to shoot yourself watching her in the Age of Innocence.
Well, fuck, look at Dracula.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that at least she was helped by Keanu Reeves being equally as bad. I'm a big Keanu Reeves fan, but he is just dreadful in that movie. They are on the same level of terrible. Like their story is like literally like on set of that movie of like Gary Oldman watching like acting them and then just stopping going, are you guys serious? Like
I like Gary Oldman's performance in that film. I don't like the film. I don't like either one of their performances. It's
bad a great casting. Looking film. It's
bad casting.
Great, yeah, horrible casting, horrible writing, but it looks really good. Great, sets and costumes and stuff. But
really went a different direction with the story.
And I can appreciate that, but I hate it. I hate the direction. I hate the direction.
I'm never going to watch that film again.
A lot of people refer to it as like a gothic masterpiece. I'm like, fine, but it's not my definition of a gothic masterpiece.
Like when he comes out in the sunlight and he's wearing those like weird blue glasses or whatever they are. Yeah, just odd. And I mean, I can respect that aspect of it. For going a different direction, but it just doesn't work for me in particular. And at that point in my life, like I had read the novel, but I had never seen a Dracula film. So I was watching and I was like, what the fuck is this?
That's the weirdest part if you read the novel, right? Because they call it Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's like, oh, this is going to be really true to the novel. And not at all. And what's weird is a couple years later, they made a similar movie, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, except it was really true to the novel. I watched it just a few months ago. I really liked that movie.
Really?
Kenneth Branagh.
I could never get past De Niro.
He's too small.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's a big part of the movie that he's like supposed to be bigger and stronger than everybody. It's kind of weird that everybody's really afraid physically of this De Niro-sized person. Like, couldn't they use some effects to make him look bigger? But no, it's De Niro. He's like, what, 5'10"?
Lifts, platforms or something? Come on.
Yeah. I mean, but I still like the movie. But anyway, we're going all over the place. So we can wrap up here. Yeah, we knew all along, I think from the very first day we came up with the show, that we would do something in the Vengeance Trilogy, and probably not Old Boy because it's the best known one. Yeah. I mean, it's not like I picked this because it's better than Lady Vengeance, really. It's just because this is what I own. This is what was available. I'm really dying to watch Lady Vengeance, but I'd probably, even when I do, there probably won't be much call to actually cover it. And yeah, it's good to get some Korean stuff done. But as we said, we have a few series that we have to get going so we can actually be productive. And the other one that predated those, and I don't care when we do it, but I mean, I still, even like almost a year later, still really want to watch some Werner Herzog stuff, because I really need to see more of his stuff. So I think it would actually just be a good opportunity for me to just, learn some more about the guy and his career, because I've only seen a fraction of his movies. But I know all about his crazy reputation. I mean, Werner Herzog's, even for somebody that works in film, what a crazy life and career this man has had. Just insane.
Yeah.
And he's just such a unique guy. So, yeah, I really hope we can do a series on him, maybe do 4 or 5 of his movies.
Sure. He's done a lot of documentaries, too. So,
and that's another thing that makes him interesting, right? There's not too many people that do both. And he does both very deftly, which I think is interesting. The last movie I watched by his was a documentary. It was the Grizzly Man documentary, which was not at all how I pictured it going in.
Mm-hmm.
I just imagined it really differently.
That's
but
disturbing.
It was good. It was good. I mean, it is disturbing because all along you know what it is, and it's weird watching somebody that believes so much in something, and you know they're on a path of destruction, self-destruction.
I can respect that. Yeah, I mean, I can respect that guy, what he was trying to do, but it's like, man, it's dangerous, dude. It's
Well, I mean, he did understand that. He always said, like he knew that he could die, but I mean, also his girlfriend died too.
and the helicopter pilot talking about how he could see it from like a far distance away.
Holy hell!
Like just a big red stain.
I mean, it's the same thing. Like a lot of people, saying, what he did was misguided, but there was also a lot of things to be admired about him. Yeah, so interesting stuff there. But yeah, so yeah, we have quite a few ideas going forward. So we're not together enough to jump right to a series, but we'll try to put that together for at least the somewhat near future. Figure it out.
Sure.
But in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably just still do a couple standalone episodes as we figure it out. So, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, 2002 from Park Chan Wook, if you want to be proper about it, properly Korean. But yeah, I'm really glad to watch it again because even though I owned it, like I actually never watched it after owning it. So it's good to know the DVD works and everything. I got really cheap. I got it for like $4 or something.
Yeah,
good to know it works. But like I said, for all the tragedy and gut-wrenching stuff in it, it does have some moments of humor. So, I mean, I'm not going to say watching it won't make you depressed. It probably very well could. So it's not like a movie you're necessarily just going to throw on for fun. But that's not how that's usually most of the movies we cover aren't those sorts of movies anyway. Not that they're always so dark and disturbing, but the whole point is, we want something that's got some substance to it, some meat for us to get into the discussion part. But yeah, I was looking up some stuff about things about people being good and bad, and there's no point in getting too deep into it. Things about like having doing horrible things but still having good intentions, and which is really how a lot of like the world works even now, like terrorists and stuff like that. Like they think they're right. They think they're right. They think they're righteous for the most part. And I mean, that's a little different, but I mean, still sort of same idea here. It comes from a good place, what these people were trying to do, and then it leads to horrific acts. And some of it's just horrible luck. Some of it seems like it's fate, and I mean, it's sad because it does reflect a lot of real life. Because real life is, there isn't a script or anything. It's just random and crazy at times, and sometimes tragedy can be piled on tragedy, and you're like, come on, how is this happening?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I appreciate a movie that can reflect that, but reflect it in a way that it's also telling an engaging story. Because I know some people can say this movie is just like downer after downer, and they're not wrong. But I do think there's a compelling story going on around it that makes it worth it. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's like all kinds of like, radical religion stuff. They all think they're right,
Yeah.
Like cults, they all think they're right,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like you. I get fascinated with that kind of stuff. The people can really get sucked in by that and just believe in like crazy, impossible things, but they believe it.
It's amazing. Mind control.
Yeah, it's amazing how it's funny. Like whenever there's a cult leader and stuff like that of any kind, I don't care who they were. Whenever you see the documentary, the news on it, there's always the people that were, sometimes they have the people that were actually in it, but there are even outsiders that were around. And they all say the same thing about how this person, almost always a man, was very charismatic. And you would just want to follow him. And you definitely believed him. He just had a way. I've never seen that in my life. At least that it works for me. And that's why I always feel so shortchanged whenever I watch these things, because I'm just like, you never have it. Like sometimes they have some footage of it, but it's never enough. Like I remember watching one about like the Waco thing, right, with that David Koresh, or his name was. I saw a bit of the footage of him blabbing, and to me, and maybe it's just the context, because I know what happened, I know what we're watching. It just sounds like horse shit. So it's really hard to put myself in their shoes and think, yeah, this guy knows what he's saying. I can really get behind this. And I know part of it has to do with, it doesn't necessarily mean you're dumb, but a lot of people, a lot of these people, something's missing in their life, something's going wrong, they're looking for answers, so they want to believe in things, which is, spreads all sorts of things, not even just cult stuff, like, some of that conspiracy theory bullshit, QAnon and stuff like that. Like things are going wrong in their life. They need something to believe in, something to blame, you know, that kind of stuff. So I get it. But part of me, I really want to see a cult leader that I don't want a cult leader that will brainwash me, but I want a cult leader where I could at least say, yeah, I kind of get it, because I've never gotten it. And I'm not trying to say because I'm so rational and smart, but maybe I am.
Well, like look at, you know, Charles Manson. Like, he looked like a fucking lunatic, you know, but people were like, they would follow him to the end of the earth, you know?
I know. And like, the more he ramped up his craziness, the more they bought into it.
Of course, you know, with that, you've got drugs involved. So
yeah, that's true too.
Sure,
I mean,
it's more,
but still, I mean, you just have, that's the other thing. Like, you have like especially the young girls, and that was like his specialty, right? That's why he got influential with others. Like, he had a way with young girls, and he would use that to get influence, because he could, you know, say, oh, I got some hot girls over here that'll bang you, no questions answered, if you, you know, do stuff for me. That's how he ingratiated himself to various people, including Dennis Wilson, whether he wants to admit it or not, right? You know, but yeah, it's just crazy to think that at some point these girls are making this choice that, oh yeah, this guy seems like a cool guy to hang out with. Like, even before the drugs, because actually, in the one of the misconceptions about, like, specifically the higher up girls, is that, like, they were not like all these lost runaway waifs. A lot of them were from good, upstanding families. That's, you know, what
I was going to say about people in cults in general. Usually, it's people that had good childhoods and grew up, you know, relatively well. I mean, you know, in good households and are educated.
Yeah,
it's so weird. It's the exact opposite of the people you think that would be involved in something like this.
So one of the reasons I get fascinated by all this, because it's one of the places I can't picture myself. I just walk in, they talk for 2 minutes, and I'd be like, nope.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And again, I don't think that's because I'm so street smart, or I'm so brilliant, or my mind is so sharp. I don't know. It just seems like a natural reaction to me. But anyway, we've gotten on to, because we both have a fascination for cults. But I meant in the larger thing, just sort of how the movie deals with, again, how in general it seems like, regardless how fantasy movies and stuff works, usually, you know, it's not like an all good, all bad. People have both things inside them, and various things that happen in their lives and influence them can make them decide how they're going to act. And even when they're acting badly and doing terrible things, there's ways to rationalize it, ways to justify it, and ways to think that they're on the side of right. So that's one of the things that's interesting about this movie, is like much of a downer it is, and much as a depressing it is, and how it ends with all this tragedy, I still think that you can watch the movie and feel a bit hopeful about it because of the sympathy we've been shown. I realize the sympathy makes it all the more tragic, but in a way, it's still the saving grace, because you can watch a movie and think, wow, humanity is awful. You know, you can watch and be like, humanity is terrible. But really, this movie makes me think it's more tragic because humanity is not awful. It's more like, this is just the trap that people can fall into. I don't know. Because you want to believe in at least a basic decency, a basic goodness. And this movie does speak to that. For all the horror that we see in the movie, they do show us the good side of some people. And you see how they get mixed up and twisted around. So so as depressing and as much of a downer as the movie is, I still think because of the sympathy aspect to it, it shows a hopefulness. And that it's not just saying humanity is awful, and that, oh, just some people are just evil. I don't know, like this. Here, I'll wrap it into a good quote here. This is from Anne Frank's diary. It is difficult in times like these. Ideals, dreams, and cherished hopes rise within us, only to be crushed by grim reality. It's a wonder I haven't abandoned all my ideals. They seem so absurd and impractical. Yet I cling to them because I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart. I mean, that's a real thing, facing, you know, the worst of humanity. So that's a good way to end, I suppose. So thanks a lot, guys. That's Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, 2002, said it before. Chan Wook Park, from the Vengeance Trilogy. We're definitely big fans. So we definitely, as we said, have the tentative plans for a couple series coming up, but in the next little while, we'll probably just have a few more standalone episodes, and we'll let you know as soon as we work those out, as we march on through 2021, trying to get a bit more of a rhythm going, a bit more consistency than we showed in the crazy up and down year that was 2020. So thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching.
Peace out. Bye.